Chapter 1. The voice that didn't belong there. January had New York by the throat that week. The wind came down the avenues like it had been deputized, and the slush on the sidewalks was the color of old arguments. If you were in a hurry, you slipped. If you were not in a hurry, you froze. Either way, the city made sure you remembered it was in charge. Inside Nero Wolfe's brownstone on West 35th Street, the weather was only a rumor. Fritz and Theodore kept the place running on civilized heat, civilized food, and civilized silence. Wolfe's orchids had their own private climate upstairs, moist and exact, as if the plants were foreign dignitaries who did not tolerate drafty hallways or human nonsense. I was at my desk, doing what I call the daily insult. That means bookkeeping, correspondence, and keeping Wolfe supplied with the sort of information he expects to arrive without him leaving his chair. He was upstairs with the orchids, which is where he goes when he wants proof that something in the world still obeys rules. Fritz brought coffee. It was good coffee because Fritz has pride and because Wolfe would rather face bankruptcy than a poor cup. I had just decided that the morning might pass without interruption, which is the sort of decision that offends fate when the doorbell rang. I went to answer it. If you live with Nero Wolfe, you answer doorbells the way a sailor answers a sudden wave. You do it quickly and with suspicion. Inspector Kramer stood on the stoop with his hat pulled down and his collar up, looking like a man who had been arguing with the wind and losing. His face was red from cold and irritation, and his eyes had that particular shine that means he has a problem he would prefer to drop on someone else. "Archie," he said, without greeting. "Come in," I told him. "You look like you were chased by a snowplow." "It should have caught me," he growled, and stomped inside. He did not wait for an invitation to the office, because Kramer has never understood the concept of invitation when he has a badge and a headache. He marched to Wolfe's door, then remembered Wolfe was upstairs, and glared at me as if that were my fault. "Get him," he said. I went up. Wolfe was in the plant rooms, seated at his work table, wearing the old brown jacket he uses when he intends to be stern with flowers. He was peering at a blossom through his glasses, with the expression of a judge considering a witness who has tried to be clever. "Kramer is downstairs," I said from the doorway. Wolfe did not look up. "Then the police are active, which is to be expected. What do they want?" "You," I said, and warmth. Wolfe's eyes lifted slowly. "If Inspector Kramer has come here in this weather, he is either desperate or bored. I hope it is desperation." "He looks desperate," I said, also damp. Wolfe made a small sound that might have been contempt for both dampness and policemen. He rose. Carefully, because Wolfe rising is an event with weight and gravity involved, and came down to the office. Kramer was pacing. I never pace in Wolfe's office if I can help it. Wolfe's rugs do not deserve it. Wolfe sat behind his desk, arranged himself, and regarded Kramer with the calm of a man who believes the world should bring its troubles to him in ordered packages. "Inspector," Wolfe said, "you are early and unpleasant. State your business." Kramer's mouth tightened. "I got a murder in a building full of echoes." Wolfe's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Echoes do not kill." "Somebody did," Kramer snapped. "And the whole case hangs on a voice that came from the wrong room." That interested Wolfe. Not his face, because Wolfe's face does not advertise interest, but his eyes sharpened a fraction, and that is enough to make you pay attention. "Proceed," Wolfe said. Kramer dropped into the red leather chair across from Wolfe and leaned forward. "Kessler Building, office tower, older thin walls, old vents. Last night, about 10:40, we get a call, disturbance on the 12th floor, loud arguing. People hear it, call security, then call us when security can't calm it down." He paused long enough to glare at me, as if I had called the building myself. "Contract specialist named Harold Wynn." Kramer went on. "Found dead in a small records room on the 12th floor. No forced entry, no obvious struggle. Looks like one clean hit to the head, hard enough to drop him. Then somebody put the room back together, just enough to make it look ordinary." Wolfe's voice was mild. "And the wrong voice." Kramer nodded. "2 witnesses, both employees." Swear they heard Wynn arguing loudly with someone in room 1208 minutes before the death. They're sure, not maybe. Sure. One of them was in 1206, the other in 1210. They heard a man yelling and another voice answering, like a fight starting up. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Room 1208 is adjacent to both. Yeah, Kramer said. And 1208 belongs to a paralegal named Dana Mercer, quiet woman, says she wasn't even on the floor. Says she was in the lobby waiting for her ride. Security camera supports that, at least for part of the time. I leaned forward. So, the witnesses heard an argument in her office, but she wasn't there. Kramer jabbed a finger at me. That's it. And we got Wynn dead in a records room a short hall away. So I got people who trust what they heard, a woman who claims she wasn't there, and a building that makes sound travel like it's drunk. Wolfe's mouth tightened slightly. People do trust sound more than sight. It is one of their many errors. Kramer scowled. So you take it. Wolfe's tone stayed calm. I have not heard a reason. Kramer's face reddened. Reason is I got no clean line, no forced entry, no obvious struggle, no clear motive. Wynn was a contract guy, not a big shot, but he had access to records. He handled vendor agreements. He handled renewal clauses. He handled things people lie about. Wolfe's eyes were steady. And you suspect the voice? I suspect the voice is the key, Kramer said. Because the witnesses are certain, and because the wrong room puts somebody in position to hide. Wolfe glanced at me. Mr. Goodwin, what do we know of Kessler Building? Older tower, thin walls, older vents. U-shaped hallway on 12, with a service chase behind several offices. That kind of construction can carry sound sideways, especially through metal. Kramer blinked at me. You been there? Not yet, I said. But I can picture it. I have lived in New York long enough to know that buildings have secret habits. Wolfe nodded once. Sound travels dishonestly, especially in buildings that breathe through metal. Kramer stared. That's why I came. You like that kind of thing. Wolfe's voice was dry. I do not like it. I find it occasionally useful. He looked at Kramer. Who are the witnesses? Mark Ellison, accountant, office 1214, Kramer said. And Rita Lane, the night cleaner. Both say they heard Wynn and someone else. Sign it tonight. Faye, I won't. And both blamed 1208 because that's where the sound seemed to land. And Dana Mercer, Wolfe said. Bring her. Kramer's jaw tightened. She's coming. I told her to come here this afternoon. She's scared, but she's smart enough to know being scared in a police station is worse. Wolfe nodded. Good. Where is the body now? Medical examiner has it, Kramer said. Cause of death is blunt force. One strike, no defensive wounds, no struggle. That suggests the victim trusted his visitor. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Or was surprised too late. Kramer stood up, impatient. So you're in. Wolfe did not answer at once. He rarely does when Kramer is in a hurry. Wolfe leaned back, fingers steepled, and stared at nothing for a moment. The way he does when he is assembling a structure and deciding whether it is worth his time. Finally, he said, I will hear Miss Mercer. If her account is coherent and the facts are intriguing, I may accept. Kramer snorted. You always accept. Wolfe's gaze turned cold. Inspector, if you wish to flatter me, do it competently. You are dismissed until 3 o'clock. Kramer glared, then left, stomping out as if the house had personally offended him. When he was gone, I said, You're going to take it. Wolfe's eyes drifted toward the stairs, toward his orchids, with faint regret. Perhaps. The premise is interesting. A voice in the wrong room suggests either deception or architecture. Both may be exploited. You like exploitation, I said. I like clarity, Wolfe replied. Exploitation is merely a method for obtaining it. At 3 o'clock, Dana Mercer arrived. I let her in and guided her to the office. She was in her early 30s, medium height, dressed plainly but carefully, with the look of someone who works around lawyers and has learned that appearance is a kind of armor. Her eyes were tired, and her hands trembled slightly when she tried to keep them still. Wolfe regarded her with the detached attention of a man deciding whether she is lying, mistaken, or both. "Miss Mercer," Wolfe said. "Sit." She sat on the edge, as if Wolfe's chair might bite. "I am told," Wolfe said, "that your office is room 1208 in Kessler Building." "Yes," she said. Her voice was quiet, but not weak. "Two witnesses insist. They heard a loud argument in your office shortly before a man named Harold Wynn was killed." Wolfe continued, "You say you were not on the floor." "I wasn't," she said quickly. "I was leaving. I was in the lobby waiting for my ride." Wolfe nodded slightly. "Time." She swallowed. "I left my office a little after 10 maybe. I went down because my car service was supposed to be there at 10:20. They were late. I waited. I checked my phone. I remember because I was irritated." "Where precisely did you wait?" Wolfe asked. "In the lobby," she said. "Near the security desk. There's a bench." "And someone can confirm," Wolfe said. "Yes," she said, and her voice steadied. "The security guard saw me. I asked him to call the car service. There's a camera in the lobby too." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Then you are confident you were not on the 12th floor at 10:40. "I am," she said. "I wasn't even in the elevators." I said, "Do you know Harold Wynn?" Her gaze flicked to me. I knew him. Not well. He worked with contract files. Sometimes I asked him for copies. "Did he ever come to your office?" I asked. "Once or twice," she said. "To deliver a document." He was polite. He seemed nervous most of the time. Wolfe's voice was calm. "Nervous about what?" Dana hesitated. "I don't know." He acted like someone was always watching him. That line landed neatly. People always think they sound dramatic when they say that. But sometimes it is simply accurate. Wolfe asked, "Were you alone in your office when you left?" "Yes," she said. "I locked my door. I always lock it. I have client materials." "Do you have a key?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "And facilities does too." Wolfe's eyes sharpened slightly. "Facilities?" Dana nodded, uneasy. "They can access offices for maintenance, vents, wiring. It's an older building," I said. "Do you know anything about the ventilation?" Dana frowned. "Only that it is loud sometimes. You can hear people in the next office if they talk loud enough, and you can hear through the vents. It's annoying." Wolfe's gaze held her. "Did you hear any argument when you were leaving?" "No," she said. "My floor was quiet. That's why it's so strange. If there was a loud argument, I would have heard it in the corridor." I asked, "Did you see anyone in the corridor?" She thought. "Number not on my side. The hallway is shaped like a U. You can see part of it, not all. There is a corner. I saw nobody near my door." Wolfe's voice was mild. "Who else has reason to be in your office?" Dana's eyes tightened. "No one. I am a paralegal. I am not important. I do not have enemies." Wolfe nodded. "That is what many victims say." Her face went pale. Wolfe continued, "Miss Mercer, do you have any reason to believe someone could imitate your voice?" "My voice," she repeated, confused. "Yes," Wolfe said. "The witnesses believe the argument occurred in your office. A voice was heard. Either the voice was yours, which you deny, or it was another, or it was carried. Sound travels dishonestly, but it travels. Tell me, do you have a voice that is distinctive?" Dana blinked, then shook her head. "Number, I don't think so." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Do you have a colleague with a similar voice?" "I don't know," she said, helpless. I said, "What about Harold Wynn? Did he ever call you? Leave messages?" She nodded slightly. "Last week, he left me a voicemail asking if I could find him a copy of a vendor addendum. He sounded urgent." "Do you still have it?" I asked. "Yes," she said, and reached for her phone. Wolfe held up a hand. "Later, Mr. Goodwin will copy it." Dana looked at Wolfe, and the fear in her eyes shifted into a different shape. It became the fear of being misunderstood, which is often worse than fear of danger. "I didn't do anything," she said. "I swear I wasn't there." Wolfe's voice was calm, not kind but not cruel. "Your innocence is not yet the issue. The issue is the voice. A voice that seems to come from the wrong room indicates that someone wished it to be believed, or that the building assisted. Either possibility may conceal the murderer." I said, "Dana, do you know anything about a service chase behind the offices on 12? Her eyes widened. "There is one. I've seen the panel in the corridor near the corner. Facilities opens it sometimes. It runs behind several offices. You can hear air moving in it." Wolfe's interest sharpened visibly now, which for Wolfe means his eyes got slightly brighter, and his chin lifted a fraction, like a man catching a scent. "How long?" Wolfe asked. "Is that chase?" Dana hesitated. "I don't know. It runs behind the U-shape, I think. It connects vents, wiring, old building." Wolfe nodded. "Old buildings have old shortcuts." He looked at me. "Mr. Goodwin, you will go to Kessler Building. You will inspect the 12th floor, the corridor shape, the service chase, the vents, and room 1208. You will speak with the two witnesses separately. You will determine whether their certainty is based on direction, volume, or assumption." "Yes, sir," I said. Wolfe continued. "You will also inspect the records room where Mr. Wynn was found. Determine access, locks, and any method by which a person could enter without forcing." Dana's voice trembled. "What about me?" Wolfe regarded her. "You will remain available. Do not return to the 12th floor alone. If you are innocent, you are still useful to the murderer as a convenient shadow." Dana swallowed and nodded. I stood. "I'll go now." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Take Mr. Saul Panzer if you wish." I shook my head. "Not yet. Let me smell the place first." Wolfe gave a small nod. "Very well." As I escorted Dana Mercer to the door, Fritz appeared in the hall. He gave Dana a look of quiet sympathy and offered her coat with a gentle hand. Dana accepted it, as if she were receiving a life preserver. When she was gone, I returned to the office and reached for my coat. Wolfe said, "One more thing." "Yes, sir." "Do not assume," Wolfe said, "that the voice was meant only to mislead the witnesses. It may have been meant to attract them." I paused. "To attract them to call security. Or to create a timestamp," Wolfe said. "Noise creates witnesses. Witnesses create certainty. Certainty can be used as a weapon." I grinned. "So the murderer might have staged an argument to plant a false location in two brains." Wolfe's eyes were steady, precisely. "And if so, the murderer is not merely violent, but intelligent enough to exploit human trust in sound." I nodded, and the case felt a little colder despite the brownstone's warmth. Outside, the city waited with its grey sky and its slush and its million ways to hide a truth in plain sight. Inside, Wolfe sat behind his desk, already imagining metal vents carrying lies like breath. He had accepted the case, not because a man was dead, though that matters, but because a voice had moved without moving a body. And in New York, anything that moves without being seen is worth Wolfe's attention. Chapter 2, Witnesses Who Swear They're Right. The Kessler Building was one of those midtown survivors that had been old when the radio was young. Its lobby tried to look modern by adding brighter lights and a polite security desk, but the marble still had the scuffs of 1,000 rushed mornings, and the air still carried that faint, tired smell of metal and dust that comes from ventilation systems built when people thought fresh air was optional. Outside, January kept biting. Inside, the heat fought back in pockets, so you'd go from cold to warm to cold again in the space of one elevator ride. That kind of inconsistency always makes me suspicious. A building that cannot regulate temperature is often a building that cannot regulate truth. I signed in, flashed a smile at the security guard, and rode up to the 12th floor with the pleasant feeling that I was doing the walking so Wolfe did not have to. Wolfe, when presented with a drafty tower, would have said something about discomfort being an obstacle to intelligence. He would then have sent me anyway. The elevator opened on 12, and I stepped into a corridor shaped like a U, just as I had described from Dana Mercer's account. It was one of those layouts that makes sense only to the architect and the man who later has to run wires through it. The walls were not thin in the way paper is thin. They were thin in the way cheap promises are thin, just sturdy enough to look honest until pressure arrives. Halfway down the hall, near the inside curve of the U, there was a service panel in the wall with a metal frame and screws that had been removed and replaced more times than the building's management would admit. I stood there a moment listening. The building breathed. Not metaphorically. You could hear it. A faint draw, a low push, like a tired animal pulling air through metal. Somewhere behind the walls, a fan turned. Somewhere behind the walls. Sound had places to go that a witness does not think about. Room 1208 was on the inside leg of the U. It had a plain door, a small frosted glass label, and something else that caught my eye immediately, because my eyes have been trained by Wolfe to notice what looks too intentional. At the bottom of the door was a draft guard, not a flimsy strip like you see in cheap apartments, but a tight, thick seal, fitted neatly, the kind you install when you are tired of air, sound, or both slipping into your space. I knelt and ran a finger along it. It was clean, newer than the other doors. I stood and looked down the corridor at the other rooms. Their doors had ordinary gaps beneath them. Enough for sound to leak, enough for shadow to show. Room 1208, with its guard, sat there like a mouth, with its lips pressed tight. That was interesting. 2 people had sworn they heard a loud argument coming from that room. If the door was tighter than the others, then either the argument was truly inside and incredibly loud, or the sound was being delivered by a route that did not require the door gap at all. The building, I reminded myself, breathed through metal. Kramer's men had kept the records room sealed, but they had allowed me to work the floor, which meant I could talk to my witnesses without stepping in a chalk outline. The first witness, Mark Ellison, was waiting in his office at 1214, an accountant's space that looked like it had never been decorated except by spreadsheets. He was a thin man with tired eyes and the slightly defensive posture of someone who has been questioned by the police and disliked being treated as unreliable. He stood when I entered, then sat quickly when he realized I was not wearing a badge. "You're the private guy," he said. "I'm the walking guy," I told him. "Wolfe does the sitting, I do the asking." His mouth tightened. "I already told the police what I heard." "That's why I'm here," I said. "I want what you heard, and I want it in your own words, without the police leaning on you like a filing cabinet." He hesitated. Then he nodded once. "Fine." I took a chair and kept my notebook closed, because sometimes a closed notebook is less threatening. "Where were you?" I asked. "When you heard it?" "In my office," he said. 1214. I was working late, month-end stuff." "What time?" I asked. He frowned. "Around 10:20, maybe 10:18. "Why do you think that?" I asked. "Because I checked my phone right after," he said, impatient. I was irritated. It was loud. "What was loud?" I asked. He leaned forward, eyes sharp. "A man's voice, angry," he said. "Sign it tonight." Clear as day, like he was right outside my door. I watched his face. He was not exaggerating for attention. He was defending his memory, the way a man defends his competence. "You're sure of the words?" I said. "Yes," Mark Ellison insisted. "Sign it tonight. Not later, not tomorrow, tonight." "And you believe it came from room 1208, I said. He pointed down the corridor, as if the door were an enemy. "From there, I know the direction. The sound came from that side." I could tell the distance. It was not far. It was close, like someone standing in the hall. "That close," I said. "Yes," he snapped. "That close." And then I heard another voice. Lower, not as loud, it said, "I won't." I kept my expression neutral, but my mind filed the words away. A demand to sign something, a refusal, then, according to the cleaner, a thud that was a neat little drama. Too neat, in a murder case, Neatness is either luck or staging. You heard a thud? I asked. Mark hesitated. I heard something. A sound, not like a shout, like a heavy thing hitting something. How soon after the refusal? I asked. Not long, he said. Maybe 10 seconds, maybe less. The whole thing felt quick. And what did you do? I asked. I went into the corridor, he said. I opened my door and looked. I saw nobody. The hall was empty, but I could still feel it, like the air was charged. I walked toward 1208, and, I said, you did not open the door. He shook his head. Number, I'm not an idiot. I knocked. Nobody answered. I thought maybe it was a domestic thing. People bring their lives to work. Then I saw the cleaner, Rita, and she said she heard it too. She called security. Security took their time. Then the police came. I nodded. Did you see anyone in the corridor at all, before or after? No, he said. That's what bothered me. If it was that loud, someone should have been there. But the hall was empty. Did you hear the voices again? I asked. No, he said. Just that burst. A burst, I repeated. Like a performance, he scowled. Like a fight. Sometimes those are the same thing, I said. He stared at me, and I could tell he did not like the suggestion that his ears might have been used. Mark, I said gently, how sure are you about direction? He stiffened. I'm sure. How sure? I pressed. He set his jaw. I could point to the door with my eyes closed. All right, I said. Now tell me this. Have you ever heard voices travel strangely on this floor? He hesitated. That was the first crack. Sometimes, he admitted. The vents carry sound. You can hear phones ring from offices you know are empty. You can hear people laugh down the hall when they're actually behind you. It's annoying. That matters, I said. He scowled. It doesn't change what I heard. It might change where it came from, I said. He started to argue, then stopped, because he knew I was right in principle, even if he wanted to be right. In fact, I left Mark Ellison and found Rita Lane, the cleaner, in a small supply closet that smelled of disinfectant and tired patients. Rita was older, short, sturdy, with the calm eyes of someone who has worked at night long enough to learn what belongs and what does not. She did not look like a woman easily fooled by drama. When I introduced myself, she nodded once. You with the big man? That's me, I said. Tell me what you heard. Rita did not need prompting. I was near the curve of the hall. I was emptying bins. I heard a man loud, angry, said, "Sign it tonight," like he was right there. I looked up thinking someone was fighting. You heard it from room 1208, I said. She pointed at the same door Mark had pointed at, with the same certainty, which made the hair on the back of my neck itch. Two people, two separate lives. Same exact pointing that can be truth. It can also be design. Yes, Rita said. From that door. You heard a second voice. I said. Yes, quieter said. I won't. You're sure of the words, I said. Rita nodded. Those words, then a thud. How soon? I asked. That's why I called security. If you hear that and you see nobody, something wrong. Did you knock? I asked. No, she said. Not my job to step into fights. My job is to clean what's left after. That was wise. Rita, I said, have you noticed that door is different from the others? She glanced down at the bottom edge. That thing, the strip, they put it in last month. Draft noise. The lady inside complained. The lady being Dana Mercer, I said. Rita nodded. Quiet lady, complained about draft and voices. Building manager put that strip, made her door tight. That was important. Dana Mercer had complained about voices. Now witnesses were blaming voices on her door, I said. If the door is tight, sound would leak less under it. Rita shrugged. Sound does what it wants in this building, comes out places it shouldn't, like the building talking. That line would have pleased Wolfe. Buildings, like people, have habits. I thanked Rita and stepped back into the corridor. I stood between 1208 and the service panel and listened again. The building breathed, Mark Ellison and Rita Lane had both described the speaker's distance the same way, clear as a person beside them. Close, like in the hall. That is a suspicious similarity. People describe sound differently unless they are describing a sound that has been delivered the same way to both, like a voice fed through a vent and released evenly into the corridor. I went to the service panel and examined it more closely. The screws were slightly marred, as if recently turned. That could mean maintenance. It could mean someone else had been inside, using the chase as a tunnel for something more useful than air. I did not open it. That would be for Kramer's men with gloves and reports, but I noted it carefully. Then I called Dana Mercer from the lobby and asked her for her keycard log, because Wolfe likes paper that does not argue. Dana emailed it promptly. The log showed she entered the building at 6:40 p.m., and her last badge activity was at the lobby security gate at 10:12 p.m. Before the argument, no badge activity on the 12th floor after that. Kramer would say keycards can be faked. Kramer says many things can be faked, mostly because it makes him feel better about his own uncertainty. Wolfe would say that certainty can be manufactured by architecture, which is more interesting. I took the keycard log and went back uptown. The brownstone greeted me with warmth and the smell of good cooking, which is always a comfort after a day in a building that breathes dust. Fritz took my coat, and Theodore's kitchen aroma made my stomach remind me I was human. Wolfe was in the office behind his desk, of course, with his book open and his mind elsewhere. The lamps gave his chair a kind of authority that no office tower can buy. I reported cleanly the way Wolfe likes. 2 witnesses, I said. Mark Ellison, late, working accountant, and Rita Lane, cleaner. Both insist they heard a man say, "Sign it tonight," coming from room 1208. Mark says it was clear as a person beside him. Rita backs him up and adds, she heard a second voice answer, "I won't." Then a sharp thud shortly after. Wolfe's eyes narrowed slightly. The same words. The same words, I said. Both point to the same door with the same confidence. Both even describe the speaker's distance, the same way, close, like someone beside them in the hall. Wolfe made a small sound of disapproval. That degree of similarity is either truth or choreography. Dana Mercer gave her keycard log, I went on. Entered at 6:40 p.m., and her last badge activity was at the lobby security gate at 10:12 p.m. Before the argument, no badge activity on the 12th floor after that. Wolfe nodded once. Inspector Kramer will claim keycards can be faked. He will, I said. And he will also claim the building is trying to murder his reputation. Wolfe ignored that. What did you observe? I leaned forward. Room 1208's door has a draft guard at the bottom, tighter than the others, installed last month because Dana complained about draft and voices. That makes the room less likely to leak sound under the door, which makes it odd that the witnesses blame that room so confidently. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. A tight door changes how sound leaks and how it is blamed. That's what I thought, I said. Also, the service panel screws look recently turned. The building breathes through metal. The hallway is a U, and there is a service chase behind several offices, Rita said. Sound comes out where it shouldn't. Wolfe leaned back slightly, satisfied in the way he gets when a case stops being about people and becomes about method. Distance distorts truth, he said. Bring me the floor plan and the vent map. Yes, sir, I said. Wolfe's gaze held mine. You will also obtain, from Inspector Kramer, the precise location of the records room and the manner in which the victim was struck. We will not allow the voice to become the only reality. It is merely the first deception. I nodded because Wolfe was right. In a case built on sound, it is easy to forget that bodies are solid and cannot travel through vents. As I left his office to make the necessary calls, I glanced once at the stairs leading up to the orchid rooms. Wolfe's plants were quiet, obedient, and real. Somewhere downtown, in an old building with thin walls and older vents, someone had used sound the way a man uses a mask. And 2 witnesses, swearing they were right, had pointed at the wrong door with the same certainty. That meant either they were both wrong in the same way, or someone had made sure they would be. Either way, Wolfe was going to enjoy taking the building apart, piece by piece, until the voice that didn't belong there finally did. Chapter 3. Wolfe tests the building's ears. Wolfe refused to visit the Kessler Building. The way a cat refuses to go out in the rain. He did not argue about it. He simply acted as if the idea were beneath discussion. That is one of his talents. He can make your plan collapse without raising his voice. In the brownstone that morning, the city's January bitterness was pressed against the windows like a creditor. Inside, the air was warm and smelled faintly of good coffee and better intentions. Fritz and Theodore were at work in the kitchen, and the aroma that drifted up the stairs had the steady confidence of a man who believes a sauce can repair the world. Upstairs, Wolfe's orchids were receiving their exact portion of attention, humid and orderly, the only living things in Manhattan that never had to apologize for needing special conditions. Wolfe sat behind his desk with his hands arranged, his eyes steady and his patience on display. The patience was not for my benefit. It was for the case. Wolfe enjoys cases that can be solved without leaving his chair, but he especially enjoys cases that can be solved by making other people do the sweating. I had brought him what I had from Kessler, 2 witnesses swearing certainty, a tight sealed door at room 1208, a U-shaped corridor, a service panel with fresh screw marks, and Dana Mercer's keycard log that placed her miles away in time, if not in guilt. Wolfe listened, absorbed, and then dismissed half the city's assumptions with one sentence. The witnesses heard words, he said. They did not hear a location. Buildings lie, I said. Buildings do not lie, they just leak. Wolfe's eyelids lowered. That is a childish distinction. A leak is merely a lie with plumbing. He sipped his coffee and stared at the wall for a moment, the way he does when he is seeing a structure no one else can yet see. You are going to make me play radio with air ducts. I am going to make you obtain facts, Wolfe replied. After hours, when the floor is quiet, you will have a guard speak a short sentence in the records room where the body was found. You will stand outside room 1208. You will listen. Then you will reverse it. You will speak in room 1208 and listen in the corridor. You will document the difference, I said. Why a guard? Because, Wolfe said. A guard is an uninterested instrument also, because you need access, and you do not possess a key to every door in New York, though your ego sometimes behaves as if you do. That was Wolfe, polite enough not to shout. Sharp enough to cut, I asked. What sentence? Wolfe's mouth tightened slightly. Use the sentence the witnesses reported. It is already part of the case. Sign it tonight. I grinned. You want the building to repeat the line like a trained parrot? Yes, Wolfe said. If the building repeats it, we will learn where it repeats it best. And if it does not, I said. Then the witnesses are less reliable than they claim, Wolfe replied. Either result is useful. I stood. All right, I will go persuade a guard to serve as a loudspeaker. Wolfe nodded once. Also, obtain from Inspector Kramer the floor plan and the ventilation map. You will not ask for them politely, you will insist. Kramer will pretend to be offended, and then comply because he wants to solve his case. You understand, Kramer, I said. I understand human weakness, Wolfe replied. Kramer's is simply loud. I left the brownstone with my coat collar up and my mind already in the Kessler Building's metal lungs. On the way downtown, the city looked like it had been washed and left to freeze. The sidewalks were slick, the air was hard, and the people moved with the clipped urgency of those who believe if they hurry they can outrun weather. At Kessler, Kramer was in a mood that could have been measured in pounds. He was standing in the lobby arguing with the building manager, a thin man with a neat suit, and the desperate smile of someone trying to keep homicide from smudging his property value. When Kramer saw me, his face tightened. What now? Floor plan, I said. Vent map, anything that shows where your building breathes. Kramer glared. Wolfe wants a vent map. He wants the truth, I said. The vent map is merely a shortcut. The building manager's smile faltered. We have mechanical drawings. Then produce them, Kramer snapped. and the man scurried as if he had been kicked. Kramer turned back to me. "You got a theory?" "We have an idea," I said. "Wolfe wants an after-Hawes test. We want to see if sound from the records room can be heard at 12:08, like it is coming from inside." Kramer snorted, like a ventriloquist act. "Exactly," I said. "Only the dummy is an office door." Kramer's eyes narrowed. "You think the argument was staged?" Kramer made a low sound of irritation. "I hate buildings. They are always in the way." I agreed. By late evening, after the daytime staff had gone and the 12th floor had settled into the quiet that makes your footsteps sound like accusations, Kramer had arranged access for me. He posted a uniformed man, Officer Hanlon, to assist. Hanlon was young, polite, and looked mildly amused at the idea of participating in acoustics. "What exactly am I doing?" Hanlon asked as we rode the elevator. "You are going to say a sentence," I told him. "In a records room where a man died." Hanlon blinked. "That's cheerful." "It is science," I said. "Science is often cheerful only in hindsight." The elevator opened on 12. The corridor was emptier now, and the U-shape felt more pronounced, like a trap set into architecture. The air was cooler on this floor, and the building's breathing was more noticeable. You could hear a faint whisper through vents, the steady pull of return air room numbers, marched along the walls. 12:06, 12:08, 12:10, the famous door, 12:08, sat quiet, with its tight draft guard. No light under it, no sound. If a man had been shouting inside, it would have had to be a special kind of shout. The records room was down the hall, tucked in a corner off the inner leg of the U.S. It had a plain door, a utilitarian handle, and the faint smell of paper and dust. Kramer's men had already processed it, but it was still sealed for the investigation, and Hanlon had a key. I positioned Hanlon inside the records room and told him to stand where Harold Wynn had stood, based on the report. I remained in the corridor at first, listening as Hanlon tested his voice. "Loud," I told him. "Not screaming, just strong." He nodded. "Got it." Then I walked back to room 1208 and stood outside the door, notebook in hand, my ear angled toward the wood, my eyes on the corridor's emptiness. "Over my phone," Hanlon said. "Ready," I said. "Say it." From the records room, through 12's quiet, through metal and air and whatever dishonest channels the building maintained, the sentence arrived. "Sign it tonight." It arrived near perfect at room 1208's door, not faint, not distant. It was startlingly present, as if someone had spoken inside the room with their mouth near the crack in the door. If I had not known Hanlon was down the corridor, I would have believed the voice was a foot away. It had direction. It had proximity. It had that ugly quality of certainty. My eyebrows went up. I whispered into the phone. "Again," Hanlon repeated it. Again, it landed at room 1208's door with more clarity than it had any right to have. I moved 2 doors down and listened. The voice was there, but weaker. I moved another door down, weaker still when I returned to 1208. It returned to full strength like the door was a speaker box. I said into the phone. "That's enough. Now stop." I stood a moment, letting the silence return, letting my mind adjust. The building had just performed a neat trick, and I did not like how neat it was. Neat tricks in murder cases are rarely innocent. I called Hanlon to meet me in the corridor. He stepped out of the records room, looking faintly impressed. "You heard me. I heard you like you were standing behind that door," I said, pointing at 1208. Hanlon frowned. "How? That's what we're finding," I said. "Now we reverse it." We went into room 1208. Kramer had secured it earlier, and Dana Mercer had provided consent through her lawyer, because nobody likes to be blamed for a murder that used their office as a puppet stage. The office was neat. A law clerk's neatness, which means papers stacked, pens aligned, and nothing left that could invite gossip. The vent in the ceiling was old, painted over, and slightly crooked. The air inside had that faint stale tone of a room that has been empty and closed. I stood near the desk and spoke the sentence, clear and firm. Sign it tonight. Hanlon stood in the corridor with his phone. Again. I repeated it. Then I stepped out into the corridor myself and listened from different positions while Hanlon spoke inside. Inside room 1208, voices seemed muffled in the hallway, not absent, but dulled, as if the draft guard and door seal were doing their job. The words leaked, but they did not jump. That was the opposite of the first test. So the building did not simply carry sound. It carried it in one direction. The records room sound arrived at 1208 more clearly than 1208's sound escaped into the corridor. That meant the witnesses, who swore they heard the argument at 1208, could have heard the words correctly while being wrong about the source. I told Hanlon, "Stay put. I want one more run." I went back down to the service panel and studied it. The screw heads were indeed marked. The panel edge had a faint scrape, as if it had been pried carefully. That could be maintenance, or it could be a man with a screwdriver and a reason. Kramer's men would open it properly later. For now, I wanted the mechanical drawings. We went back downstairs and met the building manager again. He had produced a folder of mechanical prints with the air of a man holding evidence that might sink his career. I spread them on the security desk and traced the 12th floor, the returns, the chases, the duct runs. There it was, a shared return. Air duct connected the records room area to the section behind room 1208. Not a simple straight line, but a channel through the service chase, feeding into the same return plenum. The older construction used a common return path that treated air like a cheap commodity. That by itself did not explain the clarity. Shared returns tend to smear sound, not funnel it like a megaphone. But then I saw a note on the print. A baffle installed in the duct to reduce noise transfer was listed as damaged and scheduled for repair months ago. A damaged baffle can turn a duct into a tube, and a tube can become a liar. I took photos of the relevant sections and sent them to Wolfe. Then I called Kramer. He answered with a bark. "What?" "I did the experiment," I said. "And you are going to hate it." "I hate everything," he growled. "Officer spoke the sentence in the records room," I said. I stood outside 1208. The sentence landed at 1208's door, like it came from inside. Louder than it should be, clearer than it should be, like the room is a speaker box. Reverse test shows voices inside 1208 are muffled in the hall. Door seal works in one direction, so witnesses likely did not mishear the words. They mislocated the source. There was a pause. Kramer's brain is stubborn, but it works when forced. "So the argument could have happened in the records room," he said slowly, and sounded like it was in 1208. "Yes," I said. "Mechanical drawings show a shared return. Air duct connecting the records room area to behind 1208. There is a damaged baffle in that duct. It can funnel sound like a tube." Kramer swore softly. I continued. "Meaning 1208 is a decoy, not a crime scene. The building is your ventriloquist." Kramer's voice tightened. Then the killer could speak in one room and be heard in another. "An acoustic alibi," I said. Kramer exhaled hard. "All right, that changes everything. I'm shifting focus. I'm done chasing the paralegal. We go where the body was found." "He always does," Kramer growled and hung up. I went back uptown with the prints and photos and the satisfaction that comes from proving a building can lie without even trying. In the brownstone, the warm smell from Theodore's kitchen greeted me again, and for a moment I wished murders could be solved by feeding them stew. Wolfe was in the office, seated, as if he had been waiting with a stopwatch. I handed him the photos and the annotated sections of the mechanical prints. He looked at them, eyes moving with quick precision. He did not need my excitement. He had his own. "Describe the experiment," Wolfe said. I did, and when I finished, Wolfe sat back slightly, his expression almost pleased. "So," he said, "the witnesses heard the words. They did not hear the room." "Yes," I said. "Room 1208 behaves like an output point. The records room behaves like an input. The duct and the damaged baffle act like a tube. A man could speak in one room and be heard in another. Wolfe nodded. A murderer could manufacture certainty. I grinned, and 2 witnesses would swear they were right. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. They were right about content, wrong about location. That distinction is critical. He tapped the print lightly with a finger. This building has ears, Mr. Goodwin. They are made of metal. Metal conducts sound with enthusiasm and without conscience. I said Kramer is shifting focus. He finally believes 1208 is a decoy. Wolfe's mouth tightened in what, for him, counted as satisfaction. Good. That removes the most obvious scapegoat. I leaned forward. So now we stop asking who was in 1208, and we ask who was in the records room. Wolfe nodded. And who wanted witnesses to believe the argument came from the wrong door. That is a nice trick, I said. It takes planning. Wolfe's gaze held mine. Yes, it takes planning, and it takes knowledge. Someone knew the duct carried sound. Someone knew the baffle was damaged. Someone knew that room 1208's tight door would make the illusion stronger by preventing ordinary leakage. I said facilities. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Or anyone who had reason to study the building's faults. A cleaner, a guard, a contractor. A tenant who complained. Or a man who used the service chase for other purposes and discovered its voice. I nodded, feeling the case shift from gossip to method. So the voice that did not belong there belongs to someone who knew where it would be heard. Wolfe's tone was calm, pleased, and sharp. Exactly. The building has provided us a mechanism. Now we will supply motive and identity. He glanced toward the stairs, toward his orchids, as if reminding himself that some systems are meant to carry life, not lies. Then he looked back at me and said the line, as if it were a small gift. An acoustic alibi, Wolfe said. How very modern, and how very foolish. All alibis are fragile, Mr. Goodwin, especially those made of air. Outside, January kept pressing its cold palm against the city. Inside, Wolfe had just made the building confess. Chapter 4, A Threat Heard Through Metal. The best thing about a building that lies is that it lies the same way every time. Metal does not have moods. It does not have a conscience either, but Wolfe can work with consistency. It is people who ruin a case by being creative. I came back to the brownstone with the Kessler floor prints and the satisfaction of having made a duct behave like a witness. Wolfe studied the photos, the duct runs, and the note about the damaged baffle as if he were reading a menu. When he finished, he handed the pages back to me with the air of a man returning a tool to its proper shelf. You have demonstrated mechanism, he said. Now you will provide motive, I said. So we find out what Harold Wynn was handling that was worth a voice trick and a dead body. Wolfe nodded. Yes. You will go to the victim's desk and his files. You will also go to the building security records. We will identify who entered as a visitor and did not leave. We will determine why Miss Mercer's office was selected as the acoustic target. The innocent paralegal with the tight door, I said. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Tight doors are convenient for criminals. They make the lie sharper. That was Wolfe. He makes crime sound like carpentry. By the time I reached Kessler Building again, the city had shifted into that late January tone where the sky looks permanently annoyed, and the sidewalks are a grey paste that clings to shoes like regret. The lobby was quieter, and the security guard who had been polite to me earlier was now careful, because homicide makes men careful if they have any sense. Kramer met me by the desk. He looked like he had been up too long and enjoyed it too little. You got your vent trick, he said. Now what? Now I look at Wynn's work, I said. Kramer jerked his head. Upstairs. We sealed his desk. You can paw it, but don't move anything without my people watching. Inspector, I told him, I am a professional power. He grunted and led the way. The 12th floor was emptier this time. It was afternoon. But the offices felt subdued, as if everyone had decided that breathing too loudly might get them involved. The corridor's U-shape still made you feel as if you were walking inside a bent elbow. Room 1208 sat quietly with its draft guard, looking more like a victim now than a suspect. Across the hall, the service panel sat with its scarred screws, pretending it had never been touched. Harold Wynn's workspace was a small desk area in a shared contract section. Not a corner office, and not even a private room. It had the modest, practical look of a man who handled documents for people who think money is abstract. His chair was pushed in. His pen holder was aligned. The computer monitor was off. There was a faint smell of printer toner and stale coffee, the perfume of late work. Stebbins was there with gloves and a bored expression that did not fool anyone. He handed me a folder. This was on top. We logged it. You can read it. I opened it and felt the case take a step forward. Settlement packet. Due for January processing, the front page had a vendor name in bold, Harbor Ledger Finance. The packet was thick, the kind that comes with signatures, approvals, and fine print that can hide a knife. Tucked inside was a yellow flag tab with handwriting on it. Approval timestamp doesn't match receipt time. Under it, in a smaller line, another note, check system log. That was Harold Wynn's handwriting, according to Stebbins, and it looked like a man who wrote quickly because he was tired but conscientious, the kind of man who makes enemies by being accurate. I flipped through the packet. It involved a settlement payment, scheduled to clear in January, based on a contract amendment. There were approval boxes, digital sign-offs printed out, and a time stamp that should have lined up with the receipt confirmation. It did not. I have seen enough office fraud to know that timestamps are either boring or dangerous. If they mismatch, someone either made an honest error or someone altered a record and forgot that computers remember too much. Kramer watched me. That matter. It matters, I said. Because a man does not die over paper unless the paper threatens someone. Stebbins pointed to a notepad under a stack of folders. There was also this. I leaned in. It was a simple sticky note again in Harold Wynn's hand. Meeting after 10, keep it private. No name, no room, no date. Just that. Kramer snorted. Private meeting after 10 at night. He was either ambitious or scared. Or both, I said. I took photos and wrote the details down. Then I looked at the desk itself. The surface was tidy, but the tidiness felt arranged. Wynn might have been organized, but a man who is reviewing a settlement discrepancy at night is usually not the sort of man who carefully straightens his stapler. I checked the drawers. There was nothing flashy. Pens, clips, a small pocket notebook. In the notebook, on one page, the words Harbor Ledger were written with a short list of figures and a small arrow to the word Dana. That made me pause. Kramer leaned over. Dana Mercer. Possibly, I said, or Dana could be a different Dana. But the name is there. Kramer's mouth tightened. Why would a contracts guy write a paralegal's name? Because paralegals touch settlement packets, I said. Or because someone wanted us to think they do. Kramer stared at me like he was deciding whether to throw me out of the building, ignored him, and asked Stebbins, any emails? Stebbins shook his head. It is pulling, but he had a hard copy habit. He printed everything. Of course he did. People who distrust systems print. People who plan crimes also print. Paper does not require a password. I finished with Wynn's desk and headed for the records room, because that was where the body had been found, and where the building had performed its vent trick. The records room door had no damage, no tool marks, no forced entry. A man who had been attacked there had likely opened it willingly. Kramer confirmed it. No forced entry. He let somebody in, or someone had a key and he did not protest, I said. Kramer's eyes narrowed. Still means he expected them. Inside, the records room looked like every small storage room in every Manhattan office shelving boxes. Old files labeled with years people would like to forget. The air was dry and smelled of dust and cardboard. It had the flat quiet of a room. No one visits unless they have to. I looked up at the vent grill in the ceiling. It was old, painted over, slightly crooked, and it had fresh scratches on the edges. Fresh enough to catch light. I pointed. That. Stebbins nodded. We saw it. Scratches like something was removed and replaced. Kramer snorted. Maintenance. Or someone with a screwdriver, I said. If the killer used the duct as a sound tunnel, he might also have used it as a control point. If you can open a vent, you can do more than listen. Kramer's expression was flat. "What do you mean?" "Sedative," I said. "A cable, a small speaker, a wire. A vent can carry more than air. It can carry a threat." Stebbins shifted, suddenly attentive. "You think he staged the voices through the duct on purpose?" "I know he did," I said, "because the words were too exact and the witnesses too synchronized. The building did not choose the script. A person did." Kramer grunted. "All right, who?" "Security logs first," I said. "Back downstairs." The security supervisor was waiting with a binder, the kind that exists to make men feel safe. His name was still Latham, and he still looked like someone who would rather be arguing about parking than murder. "You wanted visitor logs," he said. "I want everything between 9 and midnight," Kramer snapped. Latham opened the binder. "We have electronic sign in too." "Use it," I said. We found it quickly. At 9:52 p.m., a visitor signed in as delivery. No company name, no package description, just delivery. The badge number was recorded. The destination was listed as 12th floor. Contracts, and there was no sign out. I tapped the line. "Who issued this badge?" Latham hesitated, then said, "The night guard, Paul Driscoll." Kramer's face tightened. "Where is Driscoll?" "Home," Latham said quickly. "He worked last night." Kramer's mouth hardened. "Then we wake him up." I said, "Before we do, tell me something. Does a delivery badge grant access to the 12th floor corridor?" Latham nodded. "It can. If the destination is listed, it gives elevator access some doors too." "Like a records room?" I asked. Latham hesitated. "Records room is usually locked. Facilities and authorized staff." "Authorized staff like a contracts specialist," I said. "Or anyone with a borrowed key." Kramer jabbed a finger at the binder. "No sign. Out means the visitor badge stayed in the building." "Or," I said, "someone who signed in as delivery and left another way. Stairwell, service, exit, or simply never returned the badge." Kramer grunted. "We got cameras." "Yes," I said. "And we also have camera blind spots, because every building has them." Latham shifted uncomfortably. "Our cameras cover the elevators and main exits." I smiled. "That is comforting for thieves who like stairwells." Kramer gave Latham a look that could peel paint. "Get me footage from the elevators and the service doors between 9:40 and midnight, and get me Driscoll's address." Latham nodded, swallowing. On the drive back uptown, I called Wolfe and gave him the essential facts. Wolfe does not enjoy chatter. "Settlement packet," I said. Harold Wynn was reviewing Harbor Ledger Finance settlement due for January processing. He flagged a discrepancy. Approval timestamp does not match receipt time. He left a note. "Meeting after 10, keep it private." There was a visitor signed in at 9:52 as delivery and never signed out. Records room door shows no forced entry, suggests Wynn let someone in calmly. Vent grill in records room has fresh scratches, removed and replaced recently. Wolfe's voice was calm. "Excellent. The vent scratches interest me." "They interest me too," I said, "because the killer needed the duct not only for sound, but for control." There was a short pause, and when Wolfe spoke again, his voice carried that quiet satisfaction he gets when the case provides him a tool. "A voice from the wrong room," Wolfe said, "is not an accident. It is a tool." "Yes," I said. Now the question changes. Who wanted witnesses to blame Dana Mercer and why her room was chosen? Wolfe replied immediately, "Because her room is acoustically convenient. Also, because she is socially convenient, quiet, powerless, and easily believed guilty by people who trust their ears." "That's cold," I said. "It is practical," Wolfe said. "Now determine Dana Mercer's connection, if any, to Harbor Ledger Finance. Determine whether she touched the settlement packet. If she did, she may have been chosen for proximity. If she did not, she was chosen purely as a decoy," I said, "and the delivery visitor." "Yes," Wolfe said. "A delivery badge is a beautiful disguise. It grants presence without identity. Find out who requested the delivery, who the guard issued the badge to, and how the badge failed to return." I exhaled. Kramer will enjoy that. Kramer enjoys nothing, Wolfe said. He only endures. When I returned to the brownstone, the kitchen smell had turned richer, deeper, the kind of aroma that makes you forgive winter for existing. Fritz took my coat. Wolfe was in his office, as always, looking as if he had never moved. I laid the photos and notes on his desk. Harbor Ledger Finance, timestamp discrepancy, sticky note about a private meeting after 10, visitor signed in as delivery at 9:52, no sign out, vent scratches. Wolfe studied the vent photo longer than the rest. He finally looked up. The killer prepared the duct. Yes, I said. Fresh scratches. Someone removed and replaced the grill. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. To ensure the sound traveled cleanly and to ensure the decoy worked. And to make the witnesses point at Dana's door, I said. Wolfe nodded. Yes, now we must address why Miss Mercer's office was selected beyond acoustics, I said. She complained about voices and drafts. They installed a tight draft guard that makes her door leak less, which makes the duct illusion stronger because sound is not leaking naturally from her room. Wolfe's mouth tightened slightly. So her attempt to obtain comfort created a better stage for deception. Like the city, I said, you try to fix one thing and someone uses it to hurt you. Wolfe ignored the philosophy. Who benefits from blaming Miss Mercer? Anyon, who wants the investigation aimed at a harmless person, I said. Anyon, who wants the contracts section to seem irrelevant. Anyone connected to Harbor Ledger Finance and the settlement packet. Wolfe's eyes were steady. Good, now we shall determine who in that building fears a time-stamp discrepancy and a settlement packet due in January. I nodded. Because Harold Wynn did not die over a shout, he died over a line in a file. Wolfe's voice was calm, precise. Exactly. And the voice was used to misdirect the witnesses while the murderer conducted business in the records room. He sat back slightly, satisfied that the case had become what he likes most, an orderly structure of motive and method. Proceed, he said. I glanced once at the stairs leading up to the orchid rooms, and at the quiet, warm stability of the brownstone. Then I thought of the Kessler Building, breathing through metal, carrying lies like air. A voice from the wrong room was a tool. Now we needed the hand that used it. Chapter 5. The wrong room was chosen for a reason. By the time you have worked for Nero Wolfe, as long as I have, you develop a healthy suspicion of accidents. Wolfe does not believe in them, at least not in a murder case, and his disbelief is contagious. If a window is open, someone opened it. If a man is dead in a locked room, someone arranged the lock. If two witnesses point to the same door with the same confidence, someone either deserves a medal for architecture or a sentence for planning. The Kessler Building had given us a mechanism. Metal ducts and a loosened baffle could carry a voice like a package, deliver it to the wrong place, and let two honest people swear to something that never happened where they heard it. That was clever, but not clever enough to be the motive. The duct did not kill Harold Wynn. It merely helped the killer keep the kill quiet, while the floor became noisy in the wrong direction. Wolfe wanted motive. I wanted a name. Kramer wanted handcuffs. We were all going to get something, though, never in the order we preferred. That morning in the brownstone, Wolfe ate breakfast as if it were a moral obligation. He always does. Fritz and Theodore make sure it is worthy of his attention, and Wolfe makes sure his attention is worthy of it. The smell from the kitchen had the rich confidence of butter and stock, and the coffee was strong enough to wake a filing cabinet. Wolfe sat behind his desk with a file open and his eyes on the page, but his mind was already in the Kessler Building, traveling through ducts and corridors as comfortably as if he owned them. You will investigate Miss Mercer, he said without looking up. I had been ready for that. I already did. She is quiet, careful, and scared. Her keycard log places her last badge activity in the lobby at 10:12. That is about her body, Wolfe replied, not about her usefulness. Investigate her history within the building, find out why she was chosen. Sound is not enough. The murderer selected room 1208. Selection implies reason. I can ask Kramer to lean on HR, I said. Wolfe's eyes lifted. Do so also speak to Miss Mercer again. People omit inconvenient details, Not always from deceit, but from fear. That is poetic, I said. That is accurate, Wolfe returned. Go. I went. New York was still bitter. The wind had found a new angle for its insults, and the sidewalks had that slick look that makes you walk like you are negotiating with gravity. I caught a cab down to the Kessler Building and spent the ride watching pedestrians hurry as if their clocks were personal enemies. At the lobby desk, security looked more attentive than before, which in buildings like that usually means someone has been threatened with termination if another corpse appears. The guard on duty recognized me and waved me through with the caution of a man who suspects anyone in a warm coat might be a murderer. Kramer was not in the lobby. He was upstairs, presumably chasing paperwork with the energy of a man who resents paperwork. I called him. He answered with a bark. What? I need personnel records on Dana Mercer, I said. Complaints, disciplinary, anything that makes her name interesting. Kramer exhaled hard. You think she's involved? I think she was chosen, I said. Different thing, he grunted. Horizon 11, go bother them. Tell them, I said, cooperate. Gladly, I said, and hung up. Human resources offices always smell like coffee and caution. They have the friendly posters and the soft voices, but behind the soft voices is a cabinet full of problems. A woman named Marcia Klein ran the desk. No relation to Mason Klein from another case, and if you work homicide long enough, you learn not to react to names the way civilians do. Names repeat, motives repeat too, but less neatly. Marcia met me with the practiced smile of someone who has been taught to appear helpful while offering nothing. Can I help you? She asked. Yes, I said. I am investigating the murder of Harold Wynn. Dana Mercer's office was used as a decoy. I want to know why. Show me any complaints filed by or against her. Her smile tightened. Personal records are confidential. So is murder until it happens, I said. Inspector Kramer asked you to cooperate. She hesitated, then nodded with the stiffness of a woman swallowing a bitter pill. We can provide limited information. Limited is better than none, I said. She led me into a small room with a file cabinet and a computer terminal. She logged in, clicked through screens, and kept her body angled as if she could physically block me from seeing words. It was a charming effort, like holding a napkin in front of a flood. After a few minutes, she frowned. There is a complaint. My pen came out. What kind? Marcia looked uncomfortable. A harassment complaint, filed by Dana Mercer against a building operations employee. I waited, letting the silence do its work. People fill silence when they are uneasy. Marcia sighed. Name is Nolan Reed. That landed with the heavy satisfaction of a weight dropping into place, I said. Building operations, maintenance access. Yes, Marcia admitted. He oversees maintenance access for several floors after hawse repairs, ductwork requests, vendor coordination. Does he still work here? I asked. Marcia nodded reluctantly. Yes. Describe the complaint, I said. Marcia's mouth tightened. It is old, over a year. Dana stated that Mr. Reed made inappropriate comments and followed her to the elevator. She reported feeling unsafe. There was an investigation. Mr. Reed was counseled. No formal discipline beyond that. Counseled, I repeated. Marcia shrugged with a faint helplessness that suggested she had seen this pattern too often. We documented it. Dana requested not to interact with him, and yet he still has access to her floor, I said. Marcia hesitated. His job requires building access. His job, I said, also gives him perfect opportunity to use her office as a scapegoat. Marcia's eyes widened slightly. Are you saying he did this? I am saying he had a reason to choose her, I replied. Her name is already in a file, an enemy with a paper trail when two witnesses point at her door. The story arrives with an older story attached. That makes it easier to believe. Marcia swallowed. Dana never mentioned him again. People learn, I said. Sometimes they learn silence. I asked for a copy of the complaint summary, and she provided it with trembling hands, as if the paper itself might bite her. It contained dates, a brief description, and the note that Dana requested reduced contact. Nothing that would convict Nolan Reed, but enough to tell me why room 1208 was not just acoustically convenient, it was socially convenient. Dana Mercer was not merely quiet. She was a quiet woman who had once made trouble for a maintenance man. That is the kind of history that criminals enjoy because it comes pre-packaged. I left and called Wolfe from the corridor, keeping my voice low because office walls are thinner than truth. Dana filed a harassment complaint last year, I said, against a building operations man named Nolan Reed. He oversees maintenance access, including ductwork and after-hours repairs. Complaint is old, but it makes Dana's name easy to point at, an enemy with a paper trail. Wolfe's reply was immediate. So the wrong room was chosen for a reason beyond sound. Yes, I said. It gives the witnesses a door and gives the police a suspect with a prior conflict. Excellent, Wolfe said. Now obtain evidence of Mr. Reed's access and activity on the night of the murder. Building operations men live in logs. Kramer is already hunting logs, I said. Encourage him, Wolfe replied, and hung up. Encouraging Kramer is like encouraging a bull. You do it carefully and preferably from the side. I found him upstairs on 12, in the corridor near the service panel, glaring at a tablet held by the security supervisor, as if the tablet had offended him personally. Kramer saw me and grunted. You got something. Dana Mercer filed a harassment complaint against Nolan Reed, I said. Operations, maintenance access. Kramer's eyes narrowed. Reed, that name's been floating. Security says he is all over the building at night. Of course he is, I said. He has keys and excuses. Kramer snapped at the security supervisor. Show me the key logs again. The supervisor, sweating, scrolled and displayed an entry. Kramer jabbed a finger. There, he said. Nolan Reed signed out the maintenance master key last night at 9:45. Reason listed as vent inspection. I leaned closer. 9:45, visitor signs in as delivery at 9:52. Kramer's mouth tightened. Yeah, convenient, I said. He claims it is routine January maintenance. Kramer snorted. He said the first week of January is full of audits and airflow checks. He talked like a brochure. All smooth words. That matches the type, I said. Smooth words are used when rough acts are planned. Kramer's eyes were hard. We got the vent scratches fresh. That baffle in the duct looks like it was loosened on purpose. Intentionally loosened, I said. Not merely neglected. Kramer grunted. Exactly. And guess who knows the difference between neglect and adjustment? A maintenance man. I let him sit with that. Kramer likes conclusions that make him angry. They keep him warm. Where is Nolan Reed? I asked. Downstairs in a room with 2 uniforms, Kramer said. He's not under arrest yet, but he's not wandering. He's giving me the innocent face. Says he did nothing wrong, says he was inspecting vents. I want to see him, I said. You can, Kramer replied, but don't start a speech. Wolfe can do speeches, you do questions. I do questions, I agreed. We went down to a small conference room off the lobby. Nolan Reed sat at the table with his hands folded, posture neat, face calm. He was in his 40s, with a broad frame that could carry a tool bag without strain and a confident expression that had been trained by years of walking into offices uninvited, and being tolerated because he could fix things. When he saw me, his eyes flicked, alert. I had seen that look before. It is the look of a man measuring whether you are a problem or a nuisance. Kramer said, This is Archie Goodwin. Nolan nodded. I know the name, Wolfe's man. I smiled. I am the walking portion of the partnership. Nolan's mouth tightened slightly, not amused. What do you want? I want to know why your vent inspection included signing out a master key at 9:45, when a delivery visitor signed in at 9:52 and never signed out, I said. Nolan's gaze stayed steady. People sign in and out wrong all the time. That is true, I said. But murders happen wrong less often. Kramer snorted. Nolan ignored him. I was doing routine maintenance. Routine, I repeated. In January. Yes, Nolan said. January is when we check airflow. We get complaints after the holiday closures, filters, dampers, return vents. It is normal. Normal, I said, a word that comforts liars. His eyes narrowed. Are you calling me a liar? I am calling your explanation smooth, I said. Smooth explanations are used to cover rough behavior. He leaned back slightly. I inspected vents. That's my job. Did you inspect the vent in the records room? I asked. His eyes flicked for an instant. Yes. That vent grill has fresh scratches, I said. As if removed and replaced recently, you removed it. He held my gaze. Yes, to check the duct. You also know there is a damaged baffle in the shared return. Air duct, I said, a baffle that makes sound travel like a tube. Nolan's face remained calm. I know the building's mechanical problems. That is also my job. Do you know, I asked, that the damaged baffle can make voices spoken in the records room sound like they are coming from room 1208? His jaw tightened slightly. I heard something about that. Did you? I asked. Install the draft guard on room 1208 last month. His eyes flicked again. Number a contractor did. But you supervised, I said. He hesitated. I oversee. Yes. Kramer leaned forward. Dana Mercer filed a harassment complaint against you. Nolan's face tightened, anger flashing. That was nothing. That was exaggerated. Exaggerated, Kramer said, voice hard. She complained you followed her and made comments. Nolan's jaw clenched. I said hello. She made it a big issue. I kept my voice light. Some people do not enjoy being greeted repeatedly by the same man in the elevator at night. He glared at me. This is not about that. It is about why witnesses were guided to blame her office, I said. A prior complaint makes her an easy target. Nolan's expression went colder. I did not kill Harold Wynn. I did not say you did, I said. Not yet. I am asking about access and timing. You signed out a master key. You were on 12. The vent was manipulated. A delivery visitor did not sign out. Harold Wynn was found dead in a records room with no forced entry. He likely let someone in calmly. Nolan's lips tightened. And you think that someone was me? I think you have the right keys and the right knowledge, I said. That matters. He leaned forward slightly. You people always blame maintenance. We touch everything. So you think we did everything. That is because you can, I said. Ability creates suspicion. Kramer slammed his palm lightly on the table. Where were you after midnight? Nolan blinked. After midnight. Yes, Kramer snapped. We found your work cart stored on the 12th floor stair landing after midnight. Out of place. Why? That was news to Nolan. Or else he was a better actor than his smooth explanations suggested. His eyes widened a fraction, then narrowed. My cart, he said slowly. Summoner moved it. Kramer's smile was not friendly. Sure. The cart walked up the stairs and parked itself. Nolan's jaw tightened. I keep carts on different floors. Sometimes I leave one to pick up in the morning. On a stair landing, I said. Not in a supply closet, not in a mechanical room, on a landing where someone could grab it, stash it, and keep it out of the corridor camera view. Nolan's breathing changed slightly. It became shallow. His hands remained folded, but the fingers tightened. It was not a twitch like panic. It was a clamp like anger. I did my inspection, he said. I left. Did you sign out? I asked. He hesitated. I don't have to sign out of the building. I'm staff. Kramer growled. You signed out the key. You signed it back in. When? Nolan blinked. Latter. Time, Kramer demanded. I don't recall, Nolan said. That, I said, is what people say when recalling hurts. Kramer stood. Ina, we're done for now. Nolan stared up at him. Am I under arrest? Not yet, Kramer said. But you're not going anywhere. As we left, I glanced back and saw Nolan's eyes follow me. It was not fear. It was calculation that told me something Wolfe would like. Nolan Reed was not a man startled by events. He was a man managing them. Upstairs on 12, Kramer's men showed me the work cart. It was parked on the stair landing between 11 and 12, tucked near the wall, as if someone had wanted it not seen from the corridor. The cart had a tool tray, a flashlight, a roll of duct tape, and a small box of screws. Ordinary enough, but ordinary objects become dangerous when carried by a man with a plan, one of Kramer's men pointed. "We logged it," Reed says. "It's not his." "It has his name on the side," I said. The man nodded. "Stencil. He claims someone moved it." I examined the cart's wheels. There was grime from the stairwell, and a faint smear of something darker on the metal edge of the tray. It might have been grease. It might have been nothing. It might have been the kind of nothing that ends up in a lab report. "What about the damaged baffle?" I asked. A uniformed technician answered. "It's loosened. Looks like it was adjusted. Not broken by time. The screws are backed off like someone wanted it to vibrate." That was interesting. Time breaks things by neglect. People loosen things with intention. I called Wolfe again. "Nolan Reed is building operations," I said. "Dana filed a harassment complaint against him last year. He oversees maintenance access, ductwork. After Hawes repairs, Kramer checked key logs. Nolan signed out a maintenance master key at 9:45 for vent inspection. Visitor signed in as delivery at 9:52 and never signed out. Nolan claims routine January maintenance, audits, airflow, checks, vent scratches in records room are fresh. The damaged baffle looks intentionally loosened, screws backed off. Also, Nolan's work cart was found stored on the 12th floor stair landing. After midnight, out of place, tucked where corridor cameras would not catch it." Wolfe's voice was steady, pleased in a quiet way. "So the wrong room was chosen because the wrong woman had previously irritated the right man." "Yes," I said. Dana had a paper trail. Nolan had motive to point at her. Wolfe replied, "And he had the knowledge to use the duct as a ventriloquist." "I think so," I said. "But we still need motive beyond personal spite." Harold Wynn was reviewing a settlement packet and flagged a timestamp discrepancy. "Harbor Ledger Finance." "Yes," Wolfe said. "Now we find what the killer stole while he borrowed a voice." I paused. "Stole?" The murder was quiet, Wolfe said. "The argument was loud. Loud arguments create witnesses. Quiet murders create opportunity. Mr. Reed, if he is the man, did not merely kill to remove a nuisance. He used the commotion to do something else." That snapped the case into a new shape. Harold Wynn had been reviewing a settlement packet due for January processing. If someone wanted to alter that processing, to remove a document, or to replace a page, the best time to do it would be when the corridor was full of people listening to a staged argument at the wrong door. I said, "So the noise drew the witnesses toward 12:08, while the records room stayed alone." "Exactly," Wolfe replied. "Vertical buildings create horizontal lies. Continue." He hung up, as Wolfe does when he has delivered the essential thought. I stood in the 12th floor corridor for a moment, looking down the U-shape and imagining the scene. Two voices, delivered through metal, planting certainty. Two witnesses, pointing security called, people moving. Meanwhile, in the records room, a man opens a door calmly. Perhaps to a familiar maintenance worker, perhaps to a delivery visitor with a badge, perhaps to someone who belongs enough to be unremarkable. One blow, no struggle, then time, not much, but enough to take something, alter something, and leave. I went back to Harold Wynn's desk area and asked Stebbins to bring the settlement packet again. The Harbor Ledger Finance papers. He did with gloves, and we spread them out under a desk lamp, like gamblers studying a marked deck. The flagged discrepancy note was still there. The approval timestamp did not match receipt time. If someone had manipulated a timestamp, they might also have manipulated the approval itself. "What was Wynn looking for?" I murmured. Stebbins shrugged. "You tell me, you're the private guy." I studied the packet. It contained an approval page with signatures and a printed digital confirmation. It also contained an addendum with a clause about settlement adjustments. It was the kind of clause that could be exploited by someone who knew what to change. I checked the staples, the page numbering, the feel of the paper. Nothing obvious. But criminals with access to records rooms rarely do obvious. They do subtle. They do swapped pages and missing attachments. The sticky note Wynn wrote, "Meeting after 10. Keep it private," bothered me. It suggested he anticipated a conversation, perhaps a negotiation, if he had arranged to meet someone after 10 and that someone arrived with a delivery badge. Then the delivery visitor might be part of the meeting, or the delivery visitor might have been cover for someone else. I asked Stebbins, "Did Wynn have any outgoing emails or calls around 10? Stebbins shook his head. "It is still pulling, but they said Wynn printed most of his work. He wasn't chatty on email." That meant we would need building logs, elevator logs, security. Maybe the guard who issued the delivery badge, Paul Driscoll. As I left the desk area, I glanced again at room 1208. Dana Mercer's door looked innocent, tight sealed, quietly offended to be part of a murder. It had been chosen because it was acoustically perfect and socially convenient. That is a nasty combination. It meant the killer was not improvising. Back uptown, Wolfe was in his office, calm as a stone monument. The brownstone smelled of dinner, rich and patient. The city outside could throw its wind and slush around all it wanted. Inside, Wolfe controlled the temperature, the conversation, and now, increasingly, the case. I gave him the final report in person, because some facts deserve Wolfe's direct gaze. Wolfe listened, hands folded. When I finished, he spoke softly. "So the plan is coherent," he said. "A loud argument that points to Miss Mercer's room and a quiet murder in the records room." "Yes," I said. "Nolan Reed had a reason to choose her, and the access to set it up." Wolfe nodded once. "And now, Mr. Goodwin, you will find what was taken, altered or concealed. Harold Wynn did not die for the pleasure of hearing his killer's voice echo through a duct. He died because he possessed a fact," I said. "The timestamp discrepancy, perhaps," Wolfe replied, "or the document that proves it." He sat back slightly, and his eyes went distant for a moment, as if he were listening to the Kessler Building breathe through metal from 3 miles away. "A voice from the wrong room is a tool," Wolfe said. "Tools are used for tasks. Identify the task." I nodded, already feeling the next day's walking in my legs. The wrong room had been chosen for a reason. Now we had to find the thing the killer needed enough to borrow a voice, bend a building, and end a man's life in a records room that smelled of dust and quiet. Chapter 6, Distance distorts the timeline. Wolfe's patience has a certain tone. It is not calm, exactly. It is controlled irritation, as if he resents having to share the world with people who do not keep proper records. When that tone appears, you know he has reached a pivot point. He is done admiring mechanism and ready to use it like a hammer. That morning in the brownstone, the January wind came in only as a faint complaint at the windows. Inside, the air was warm and smelled of coffee and a stock simmering downstairs that had the kind of depth only Theodore can manage. Fritz moved through the hall with the quiet precision of a man who believes order is a form of morality. Wolfe sat behind his desk with a notebook open and his eyes sharp. He began to tell him about Nolan Reed again, because Nolan was convenient, and convenience is a habit. Wolfe stopped me with a raised hand. "He knew of the voice," he said. I blinked. "You spent 2 days on the voice." "I spent 2 days on mechanism," Wolfe corrected. "Mechanism is not motive. It is not identity. We now know the building can misplace sound. That is finished. Now we pursue time." "Time," I said. Wolfe nodded. "The witnesses did not merely mislocate the source. They may have mislocated the sequence. A sound delivered through metal does not arrive the same way a man's breath arrives. It can distort distance. It can also distort timing." I leaned back. "You think the argument was heard later than it occurred?" "I think," Wolfe said, "that the killer used the building's dishonesty to confuse not only location, but chronology. You will stop chasing who spoke. You will chase when the words were heard. That was Wolfe in full command. He does not just change directions. He changes gravity. Go, he said. Get me the witnesses' time statements again, not their memories of words, their memories of when. Then obtain building logs, power, elevators, access, align them. Yes, sir, I said, and reached for my coat. Also, Wolfe added, do not assume the killer left immediately. A man who stages a loud argument and commits a quiet murder usually wants time afterward. Find the gap. I left, and outside the city was its usual January self, grey and impatient. The cab ride downtown gave me a chance to think. Wolfe's point was sharp. People remember words in bursts. They remember time in rounded chunks, but building logs do not round. They record. If the killer used the argument as a distraction, the timing of that distraction would matter more than the voice itself. At the Kessler Building, Kramer was already in motion, which means he was scowling at paper and barking at people. I found him in the lobby near the security desk. You look cheerful, I told him. I'm thrilled, he said. We got a building full of ducts and a maintenance man full of excuses. I need the witnesses again, I said. Specifically their time estimates. Kramer frowned. Why? Wolfe wants time, I said. He thinks distance distorted the timeline. Kramer stared at me, then made a low sound. Wolfe. Fine. Mark Ellison is upstairs. Cleaner is gone. But we got her statement. Go. I went up to 12 and found Mark Ellison in his office. Still defensive, still tired, still wanting to believe his ears were a court of law. When I asked him about time, he frowned. I told you, around 11:30. Try again, I said. What made you say 11:30? I checked my phone, he insisted. Right after it happened. Right after, I said. And what did your phone show? He hesitated, then grabbed his phone from the desk drawer like a man producing an exhibit. I looked at the lock screen. It said 10:18. I felt my eyebrows lift. 10:18. Yes, he said, irritated. That's why it stuck. It was early enough that I thought. Great. I'm going to be up late anyway, and now someone is screaming. I nodded slowly. So, the argument began at 10:18, according to your memory of your phone. Yes, he said, 10:18. And you told the police 11:30 because... I asked. Why? He blinked. Because everything got muddled. Security came later. Police came later. I didn't keep staring at the clock. I said, Mark, you understand this matters. He frowned. It matters that you're making me look stupid. It matters, I said, that you may have made a simple error because the building and your adrenaline changed your sense of sequence. He looked away, jaw tight. 10:18. I left him and went straight to the security desk to request building logs. Kramer had already leaned on the manager, so the manager produced them with the air of a man turning over a family heirloom. The building power log showed the records room lights switched on at 10:16 p.m. that made my pencil pause. If Mark heard the argument begin at 10:18 and the records room lights came on at 10:16, then someone was in the records room 2 minutes before the argument reached Mark's ears. That fit Wolfe's notion perfectly. A killer enters the records room, turns on the lights, prepares the stage, then triggers the voice distraction through the duct. Next came the elevator logs. The building's system recorded elevator trips and access key usage. At 10:12 p.m., there was a trip to the 12th floor, using a vendor access key tied to Nolan Reed's department. Vendor access key, not a named person, but a controlled credential, the sort that can be lent quietly. I photographed that entry and sent it to Wolfe. Kramer joined me in the lobby as I reviewed the logs. We got the medical examiner narrowing time of death, he growled. What? I asked. Between 10:20 and 10:40, Kramer said, based on body temperature and lividity, not precise, but close enough to match your 10:18 argument window. I nodded, feeling the pieces tighten. So the argument begins at 10:18, records room lights on at 10:16, Elevator trip to 12 at 10:12. Death between 10:20 and 10:40. Kramer scowled. Matches too neat. I don't like neat. Neat is what you get when someone plans, I said. Kramer grunted. Or when Wolfe decides it's neat. I ignored that and went back upstairs to Harold Wynn's desk. Stebbins was there again, looking more alert than usual. I asked to see the settlement packet. He opened the evidence box and laid it out. As he did, I noticed something I had not noticed before, because yesterday I was thinking about ductwork, and today I was thinking about time. There was a gap in the packet's sequence, a missing folder, not obvious by page count, but obvious by staple marks and the shape of indentation where a thicker sheet had once been. What was here? I asked Stebbins. He shrugged. That's how we found it. No, I said. Yesterday you had a thicker folder. There was an original approval sheet. Stebbins frowned. Original approval sheet. That would be in evidence. It is not here, I said. We checked the evidence inventory. The original approval sheet was not listed separately. That meant it had been present before the murder and gone after. Or it had never been there when police arrived, which would mean the killer took it. I called Kramer. We have a missing folder. The settlement packet's original approval sheet is gone. Kramer's voice came sharp. Gone. Yes, I said. Not in evidence, not in desk, not in the packet. Someone removed it. Kramer swore softly. That's your stolen task. Wolfe will love that. Wolfe already loves it, I said. Now we prove who removed it and when. That was the when Wolfe wanted. I went to the IT desk on 11 and asked for audit logs of Harold Wynn's shared drive. Its staff always look like they are trying not to be blamed for other people's stupidity. A man named Lyle Hampton handled the logs. He was thin, nervous, and eager to be useful in a way that would protect him later. We already pulled some access logs, Hampton said. I need deletion logs, I said. Specifically anything labeled January approval proof. Hampton blinked, then typed. His fingers moved fast, and his eyes darted as if expecting Wolfe to appear behind him and judge his competence. After a minute, he said, there was a scan file named January approval proof. It was accessed and deleted at 11:02 p.m. My stomach tightened. 11:02. Yes, Hampton said. It was deleted from the shared drive. By whom? I asked. Hampton hesitated. We have the terminal source. It came from a workstation near the maintenance office. Not finance. Not legal maintenance. That was another weight dropping into place. So, I said, the murder occurs between 10:20 and 10:40. The argument is heard at 10:18, and at 11:02, someone deletes the scan labeled January approval proof from a terminal near maintenance. Hampton nodded nervously. Yes, I asked. Can you tell whose credentials? He swallowed. It used a generic operations login, vendor access group. It should not be used for document access. Which means it was used on purpose, I said. Hampton nodded quickly. Yes, I thanked him and left, calling Wolfe from the elevator, because my patience was gone, and Wolfe likes urgency when it is supported by facts. Time is lining up, I said. Witness Mark now says the argument began at 10:18. Building power log shows records room light switched on at 10:16. Elevator logs show a trip to 12 at 10:12, using a vendor access key tied to Nolan's department. Medical examiner says Wynn died between 10:20 and 10:40, matching the argument window. Also, we found a missing folder from Wynn's desk. The settlement packet's original approval sheet is gone. It reports someone accessed Wynn's shared drive at 11:02 and deleted a scan labeled January approval proof. That deletion came from a terminal near the maintenance office, not finance or legal. Wolfe was quiet for a moment, and I could almost hear his mind snapping the structure into place. Finally, he said, so the killer needed time after the death. Yes, I said. He used the argument to create witnesses and distract attention. Then he used the aftermath to remove the real proof and clean the paper trail. Wolfe's voice was calm, satisfied. Distance distorts truth. So does delay, Our killer used both, I said. He made witnesses point at the wrong room, and he made time feel later than it was. That gave him a cushion. Wolfe replied, "Exactly. Now, Mr. Goodwin, we shall stop treating the voice as the primary deception." The primary deception was time. The voice was merely the lure. The true task was removal. "Your removal of the original approval sheet," I said. "And removal of the scan proving it," Wolfe confirmed. The murderer could not allow an audit to discover the mismatched timestamps. He therefore eliminated the evidence and replaced it with clean pages. That requires opportunity, access, and comfort in maintenance corridors. "Nolan Reed," I said. Wolfe's tone remained steady. "Perhaps, or someone using his department's credentials. Do not mistake a key for a hand." I exhaled. "You want the next step?" "Yes," Wolfe said. "You will determine who had physical access to the maintenance terminal at 11:02. The building's cameras will show who was near that office. The logs will show who used the vendor access key, and you will determine whether the visitor signed in as delivery at 9:50 is connected to this deletion." "Because the delivery visitor never signed out," I said. "Correct," Wolfe replied. "A delivery badge provides anonymity. It also provides a scapegoat. We must decide whether Mr. Reed acted alone or employed another." I nodded, though he could not see it. "And we bring them all to your office in the end." Wolfe's voice was quiet and pleased. "Naturally, facts are best presented in my office, where comfort discourages theatrics and truth can be heard without interference from metal ducts." I hung up and stepped out into the cold air again, feeling the case tighten around Nolan Reed and his department like a noose made of logs and timestamps. The building had tried to make sound lie Wolfe had made time testify, and now, whoever had borrowed a voice to distract a corridor was going to learn that buildings keep records, even when people try to delete them. In January, seconds matter. And delay can kill, or, if you are lucky, it can convict. Chapter 7. Wolfe forces the voice to reveal its owner. If you have never watched Nero Wolfe arrange a room the way a surgeon arranges instruments, you might think the whole business is theatrical. It is not. Wolfe dislikes theater. Theater depends on applause, and Wolfe has never needed any sound other than his own conclusions. What he likes is control. That night the brownstone on West 35th Street was as controlled as a bank vault and twice as comfortable. The front hall was warm, the rugs were quiet, and the air carried the steady confidence of Theodore's cooking. Fritz moved with his usual unhurried precision, appearing only when needed and vanishing before anyone could become rude. Somewhere upstairs the orchid rooms held their private climate, humid and exact, the only place in Manhattan where metal and air and time obeyed rules. Wolfe had decided that the case would obey rules too. He had sent me out in the afternoon to fetch what he called an instrument. What I brought back was a 3-foot segment of galvanized duct, an elbow joint, and a small portable fan from a hardware store on 9th Avenue, whose clerk looked at me like I was planning to remodel the planet. Wolfe had also requested a roll of fresh tape and a short length of flexible hose. He did not explain why, because Wolfe does not explain until he has results to justify explanation. By 8 o'clock the office was prepared. Chairs were arranged with intent. Wolfe's chair behind the desk was the anchor. Mine was at my desk, because I do not get a red leather chair unless Wolfe wants me used as bait. The red leather chair that usually holds suspects was placed where Wolfe could watch hands and faces without turning his head. 2 other chairs were positioned near the front, not in a line, but in a slight curve, because Wolfe believes a straight line invites unity and unity invites resistance. The duct segment sat on a side table like an innocent piece of plumbing that had wandered into the wrong house. Inspector Kramer arrived. First, of course, because if you do not give Kramer a start time, he arrives early just to complain that you are wasting his time. His coat was damp at the shoulders, his hat was crooked, and his expression suggested he had been wrestling the city, and the city had cheated. "You got your parade," he said. Wolfe did not look up from the papers on his desk. "I have an assembly, you will behave." Kramer snorted. "Sure." Dana Mercer arrived next, I met her at the door. She looked better than she had on the first day, which meant she looked less like she might faint, but she was still pale and still guarded. She held her purse like it was a shield. She had brought a lawyer's instinct without bringing a lawyer, which I respected. "Mr. Goodwin," she said. "Come in," I told her. "Wolfe promised not to bite." Her eyes flicked toward the office. "He does not look like the type who needs to bite." "That's the problem," I said. "He can chew without teeth." She managed a thin smile and followed me in. Behind her came Paul Driscoll, the night guard who had issued the visitor badge, signed in as delivery, and then somehow let it vanish into the building like a coin into a sewer grate. Driscoll was in his 50s, built like a man who had once been strong and now carried his strength as memory. His face had that defensive look common to security men who have discovered that security mostly means being blamed. He kept twisting his cap in his hands, which told me his conscience was awake, even if his policy manual was asleep. Then Nolan Reed arrived. He came in between two plainclothes men from Kramer's squad, not cuffed, but clearly not invited. Nolan had the confident posture of a man who had spent years walking through offices with a key ring and an expression of authority, and he was trying hard to bring that same posture into Wolfe's office. The office refused it. Wolfe's brownstone has a way of shrinking men who rely on badges, keys, or titles. It does it with rugs and silence. Nolan's eyes went first to Dana Mercer. There was something quick and sharp in that glance. Not fear, not guilt, but annoyance. Like a man seeing a file he thought had been closed. Dana stiffened, but she did not look away. Whatever Nolan had done a year ago, she had learned something from it, if only that lowering your eyes invites repetition. Kramer took up his usual position near the door, because Kramer trusts doors the way some men trust prayer. The plainclothes men stayed in the hall. Wolfe looked up at last. His eyes passed over the group with calm ownership, as if they were all objects delivered to him for sorting. "Be seated," he said. Dana sat quickly, near the front. Driscoll sat next to her and looked like he might apologize to the chair. Nolan took the red leather chair with deliberate confidence, as if claiming it. Wolfe let him. Wolfe likes suspects to become comfortable. Comfort makes them careless. I remained at my desk. Wolfe folded his hands. "We will begin with an elementary fact. 2 witnesses heard an argument and blamed room 1208. That blame is false." Nolan's mouth tightened. "You cannot call it false. They heard what they heard." Wolfe's tone was calm. They heard what was said. They did not hear where it was said. "Sound does not respect your ego, Mr. Reed." Kramer grunted approval. Dana's shoulders eased slightly, as if a weight had been shifted off her spine. Wolfe continued. "The Kessler Building is an older structure with thin walls, vents, and a service chase behind offices. A damaged baffle in the shared return, air duct creates an acoustic tube. Words spoken in the records room can be transmitted and emerge near, perfect at the door of room 1208. Driscoll blinked. "You mean like a vent talking?" Wolfe nodded. "Exactly. A vent talking, a building speaking with another man's mouth." Dana said softly, "So they heard it through the vent. They heard it through metal." Wolfe replied, "Metal has no loyalty to truth." Nolan leaned back, trying for dismissal. "Buildings have quirks. That does not prove murder." "It proves deception," Wolfe said. "Now we address your involvement." Nolan's jaw tightened. "My involvement?" Wolfe's gaze was steady. "You oversee building operations. You have access to ductwork, vents, and after-hours repairs. You signed out a maintenance master key on the night of the murder, claiming a vent inspection." Kramer cut in, voice hard. 9:45, logged. Nolan lifted a hand slightly. "Routine." Wolfe nodded as if agreeing with a child. "Yes, routine. You use that word often. You use it the way you use a master key. It opens doors." Wolfe turned slightly toward Dana. "Miss Mercer, provide your keycard log." Dana had come prepared. She produced a printed page. I took it and handed it to Wolfe. Wolfe did not read it closely because he already knew its contents, but he held it up enough for the room to feel its authority. You entered at 6:40, and your last badge activity was in the lobby at 10:12, Wolfe said. Pause before the disturbance. Therefore you were not on the 12th floor during the death window. Nolan's mouth tightened. Cards can be faked. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Even if they can, the building itself clears her. Mr. Goodwin performed tests. Voices spoken in room 1208 are muffled in the hallway because her door has a tight draft guard. Therefore, room 1208 is unlikely to project a loud argument into the corridor. Dana's hands unclenched for the first time. She looked at Nolan with something that was not triumph, but relief edged with anger. She had been pointed at, and she had felt it, and now the pointing was being returned to its proper owner. Wolfe's tone remained calm. In short, Miss Mercer could not have produced the hallway argument from her office. Her office was the loudspeaker, not the source. Kramer nodded once, satisfied. Driscoll looked confused, as if the building had betrayed him personally. Wolfe turned to me. Mr. Goodwin, present the physical preparations. I opened my folder and laid out the photographs and notes on Wolfe's desk. I spoke clearly, because clarity is what Wolfe likes, and because Nolan Reed looked like a man who would pounce on any vagueness. Vent grill in the records room has fresh scratches, I said. Removed and replaced recently. Mechanical drawings show a shared return. Air duct connecting the records room area to the plenum behind room 1208. The baffle that should reduce sound transfer was not merely damaged. It was loosened intentionally, screws backed off. I slid another sheet forward. Nolan Reed signed out a maintenance master key at 9:45 p.m. for vent inspection. Visitor signed in as delivery at 9:52 and never signed out. Elevator log shows a trip to the 12th floor at 10:12 using a vendor access key tied to Nolan's department. Kramer added, records. Room lights switched on at 10:16. Witness Mark Ellison now places the start of the argument at 10:18. Medical examiner puts time of death between 10:20 and 10:40. Nolan's eyes narrowed. Coincidences. Wolfe's gaze did not waver. Coincidences do not arrange themselves into an orderly ladder, Mr. Reed. Only men do that. I continued. Settlement packet for Harbor Ledger Finance had an original approval sheet missing from the desk and not logged into evidence. Audit shows a scan labeled January approval proof was accessed and deleted at 11:02 from a terminal near the maintenance office. Not from finance, not from legal maintenance. Driscoll's eyes widened. Maintenance terminal. Nolan's face tightened, then smoothed. Building operations uses terminals. It is not unusual. Wolfe nodded. It is unusual to delete a scan labeled January approval proof after a man is murdered. Nolan's voice stayed controlled. I did not delete anything. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. We will address your denials after we address your capabilities. He gestured toward the duct segment on the side table. Mr. Goodwin. That was my cue. I stood, lifted the duct segment, and carried it to Wolfe's desk. It was not heavy, but it was awkward, and it made me feel like a man bringing a trombone into a courtroom. Wolfe spoke to the room as if offering a lesson to inattentive students. Some of you may believe this acoustic phenomenon is too clever, too delicate to be used deliberately. Wolfe said, you may believe it is a quirk that occurred by chance. That belief is convenient for the guilty. Nolan's mouth tightened. Wolfe continued, we will demonstrate a principle. This is a portable duct segment. It is not your building. It is simpler. Therefore, it will not produce your building's precise effect. But it will illustrate how sound can be relocated and how a listener can be confident and wrong. Kramer scowled. You're doing a science show. Wolfe glanced at him. Inspector, you have watched criminals use guns. Do not be shocked when one uses air. Wolfe instructed me to attach the elbow joint and the flexible hose. I did, sealing it with tape. Wolfe had positioned the small fan near the open end, pointed inward, to mimic airflow. The fan's hum was mild, like an annoyed insect. Wolfe said, Mr. Goodwin, go to the front hall with the end of the hose. Speak into it. I will remain here. Inspector Kramer will stand by the door to the office. Miss Mercer and Mr. Driscoll will remain in their seats. Mr. Reed will listen. I carried the hose end to the front hall. Just outside the office doorway, Fritz, passing silently with a tray, paused long enough to watch with mild curiosity, then moved on as if men regularly carried ductwork through Wolfe's home. Fritz has seen enough to accept anything. Wolfe called out, "Ready." I put my mouth near the hose and spoke in a clear voice. "Sign it tonight." I did not shout. I did not whisper. I spoke as I would speak to Fritz when asking for coffee, which is to say, politely. With expectation from inside the office, I heard Dana Mercer gasp. Kramer's voice barked. "Damn." Wolfe's tone remained calm. "Again, Mr. Goodwin." I repeated it. "Sign it tonight." When I returned to the office, Dana was staring at the duct on Wolfe's desk, as if it were a snake that had learned English. Driscoll looked pale. Nolan Reed looked angry. Wolfe said, "You heard it." Kramer muttered, "I heard it like he was in here." Wolfe nodded. Relocation of sound creates confidence. Confidence creates certainty. Certainty creates blame. A murderer who understands this can plant blame like a seed. Nolan's voice was clipped. "This proves nothing about me." Wolfe's eyes were cold. "It proves the method was possible. Now we address who could use it." He leaned back slightly. Miss Mercer had no access to the records room after 7:10. Mr. Driscoll issued a visitor badge at 9:52 and did not record its return. "Inspector Kramer, you will question Mr. Driscoll regarding that lapse." "I will question him now regarding his memory." Driscoll swallowed. "I did not do anything wrong." Wolfe's voice was mild. "Wrong is a large category. Tell me who signed in as delivery." Driscoll twisted his cap. "A man mid-30s, maybe knit cap, carried a small box. Said he had to drop something for contracts." Wolfe asked, "Did you ask for identification?" Driscoll's shoulders sagged. He had a vendor badge. It looked official. Kramer growled, "Vendor badge is not a name." Driscoll's face reddened. He looked like he belonged. People look like they belong, and you let them through, or you get yelled at for delaying business. Wolfe nodded, as if that were the first sensible thing said in an hour. "So you issued the badge, and he did not return it." Driscoll swallowed. "I was distracted later. There was a call from 12 noise complaint." Wolfe's eyes narrowed slightly. "At approximately 10:18, Driscoll blinked. "Yes." "So the noise served its purpose," Wolfe said. "It distracted you. It created urgency. It reduced your attention to procedure." Driscoll's mouth tightened. "I did what I could," Kramer snapped. "You did what was convenient." Wolfe lifted a hand, silencing Kramer with the ease of a man closing a drawer. "Mr. Driscoll's failure is not the murder. It is a gate. Gates matter, but they do not swing without a hand." He turned his gaze to Nolan Reed, and the room felt suddenly smaller. "Mr. Reed," Wolfe said, "you are the hand most capable of swinging that gate. You supervise vendor access keys. The elevator log shows a trip to 12 at 10:12, using a vendor access key tied to your department. You signed out a maintenance master key for vent inspection. The vent grill in the records room was manipulated. The baffle was loosened. The terminal that deleted January approval proof is near your maintenance office." Nolan's face tightened. "You are building a story." Wolfe's tone stayed even. "I am building a structure. Stories collapse. Structures stand." Nolan leaned forward slightly, voice controlled but sharp. "Harold Wynn was a contract specialist. People come to him, people ask questions, people argue. A building has quirks. A duct carries sound. That is all you have, quirks and coincidence." Wolfe nodded. "If that were all, you would be correct. But we also have motive." He paused, then said, "Harold Wynn was reviewing a settlement packet due for January processing involving Harbor Ledger Finance. He flagged a discrepancy. Approval timestamp did not match receipt time. That discrepancy indicates forged approval timing." Dana's eyes widened. Driscoll looked blank, because forged timestamps mean nothing to night guards. but they mean everything to people who commit fraud. Wolfe continued. If the approval timing is forged, then a settlement could be processed improperly, and funds could be redirected or released under false authority. Mr. Wynn possessed proof. Proof existed in an original approval sheet and in a scan labeled January approval proof. Wolfe's eyes remained on Nolan. That proof is now missing. Nolan's face changed. It was subtle, but Wolfe lives on subtlety. Nolan's jaw tightened, and his fingers resting on the chair arms flexed slightly, like a man whose hands remember paper. Wolfe saw it and let it sit in the air like a pin. You reacted, Wolfe said quietly. Not to ducts, not to keys, not to timestamps. You reacted to missing paper. Nolan's voice rose a fraction. That is ridiculous. Wolfe's eyes were steady. It is human. People reveal what they value by what they fear losing. Kramer's voice was hard. That approval sheet is missing. Reed, you took it. Nolan snapped. I did not. Wolfe's tone remained calm, almost gentle. Consider your problem, Mr. Reed. Harold Wynn discovers the forged approval timing. He schedules a private meeting after 10. He likely intends to confront someone quietly. If he goes to management, the fraud collapses. If he goes to legal, it collapses. If he goes to a regulator, it collapses permanently. Wolfe leaned back slightly. Therefore, you needed two things. You needed Mr. Wynn silenced, and you needed the proof removed before morning, before anyone else saw it, before it became a file in a system you could not control. Nolan's eyes narrowed. You keep saying you. Wolfe nodded once. Because the evidence keeps pointing to you. You had the access to the vents, the keys, the vendor credentials, and the maintenance terminal. You also had reason to select room 1208 as the decoy. Dana stiffened. Wolfe turned to her briefly. Miss Mercer, Wolfe said, you filed a complaint against Mr. Reed for harassment. Dana's voice came out tight. Yes, Wolfe nodded. That complaint created a paper trail of hostility. If the witnesses blamed your office, the police would find your name connected to his. An old complaint would make you appear suspicious. It would make him appear merely irritated by a troublesome tenant. Nolan's face flushed. That complaint was nonsense. Dana's eyes were steady. It was not. Wolfe's voice cut through them both. Ina, the point is not your past behavior, though it is unflattering. The point is that you were the only man positioned to move the voice and move the evidence. Driscoll swallowed. But I saw a delivery man. Wolfe nodded. Yes, the delivery visitor is either your accomplice or your disguise. A vendor badge, a box, a sign, in as delivery, and then a failure to sign out that provides a shadow identity. The argument at 10:18 provides distraction. The murder occurs between 10:20 and 10:40. Then, at 11:02, the scan is deleted from the maintenance terminal. That requires lingering access, not panic. It requires comfort in the building's back corridors. Kramer leaned forward, voice rough with satisfaction. That's you, Reed. You were still in the building. Nolan's mouth tightened. You cannot prove I was at that terminal. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Not yet, but we do not require your fingerprints on a keyboard to identify the hand behind the plan. Your department's credentials were used. Your keys were signed out. Your maintenance cart was found stored on the 12th floor stair landing after midnight. Out of place, tucked where corridor cameras would not catch it. That is not an accident. It is staging. Nolan's eyes flashed. Summoning could have moved my cart. Wolfe nodded. Yes, someone with access. Someone in building operations. Someone under your authority. If you did not act alone, you commanded the tools. Kramer muttered, now we're getting somewhere. Wolfe ignored him. He leaned forward slightly, and his voice softened, which is always a warning. Mr. Reed, Wolfe said, you may attempt to hide behind what you call building quirks. You may attempt to claim that the duct did what it did by chance, that keys were used routinely, that logs are imperfect. But the method was too deliberate. The timing was too aligned. The missing approval sheet and the deleted scan reveal purpose. The decoy voice reveals planning, and your reaction to missing paper reveals fear. Nolan's hands tightened again. This time his fingers did not twitch. They curled, as if he were holding something invisible. Wolfe's gaze pinned him. You understand something now that you did not understand. When you began, you believed you could move sound and therefore move blame. You believed you could delete a scan and therefore delete proof. But you cannot delete structure. You cannot delete the sequence you created. You cannot delete your own access. Nolan's voice came out low. This is circumstantial. Wolfe nodded. All evidence is circumstantial. The universe does not provide labels. We interpret circumstances. The circumstances here are overwhelming. He paused, and the room fell quiet enough to hear the house's soft hum of heat, the city muffled outside, and somewhere far above, the faint drip of water feeding Wolfe's orchids. Wolfe spoke again, and his tone was almost conversational. Harold Wynn arranged a private meeting after 10, Wolfe said. He did so because he was frightened. He was not frightened of Dana Mercer. He was frightened of whoever had forged approval timing on a harbor ledger finance settlement. That person needed the original approval sheet, and the scan labeled January approval proof removed before morning. Therefore, that person killed Mr. Wynn, then used the distraction of a relocated argument to create witnesses who would swear to the wrong door. While the floor's attention pointed at room 1208, the murderer worked quietly in the records room and later at the maintenance terminal. Wolfe's eyes remained on Nolan. You were the only one who could move the voice, move the keys, move through the building unseen, and move the evidence into disappearance. Nolan's lips parted slightly, then closed. His face was still controlled, but the control looked strained, like a beam under too much weight. Wolfe finished with a quiet line that had no ornament and did not need any. The voice from the wrong room was yours, Wolfe said, because you were the only one who could move it. For a moment Nolan did not speak. His eyes flicked toward Dana Mercer, toward Driscoll, toward the door where Kramer stood like a bulldog, guarding a stake. There was nowhere to go. Even if Nolan ran, he would still be running inside the structure Wolfe had built. Kramer straightened, ready to pounce. But Wolfe lifted a hand slightly, holding the moment, because Wolfe enjoys timing almost as much as criminals do, and he uses it better. Nolan's voice finally came out tight. You think you have me? Wolfe nodded once. I do, Kramer said. All right. Reed, we're done. Dana Mercer exhaled, a long breath that sounded like months of fear leaving her body. Driscoll looked sick, realizing his lapse had been used like a lever. I watched Nolan's hands. They were still now, not steady with control, but still with resignation. The hands that remembered paper had nowhere left to put it. Wolfe leaned back in his chair, as comfortable as if he had just concluded an argument about orchids. The building had tried to throw its voice. Wolfe had made the voice point back to its owner. Chapter 8. The voice finds its owner. If you have the patience to watch a guilty man in Nero Wolfe's office, you learn that confession is rarely a burst. It is usually a leak. First comes the tightening of the face, then the shifting of the eyes, then the slow surrender of language as it stops being defensive and starts being explanatory. Wolfe had just spoken his quiet line about the voice belonging to Nolan Reed, because only Nolan could move it. The room held still after that, as if even the furniture wanted to hear what came next. Dana Mercer sat rigid but breathing again. Paul Driscoll looked like a man who had discovered that a small lapse can become a bridge for murder. Kramer stood near the door with the contained impatience of a policeman whose hands already itched for cuffs. Nolan Reed sat in the red leather chair, jaw tight, eyes hard, trying to keep his confidence intact, the way a man keeps a coat buttoned against wind, but confidence is clothing, and Wolfe had already torn the seams. Wolfe did not press immediately. He never does. He lets silence do what it does best, which is force a man to fill it with something, even if that something is his own ruin. Finally, Nolan spoke, voice clipped. You're making it sound like I planned a circus. Wolfe's tone remained calm. Number, I'm describing that you planned deception. Circuses require talent. Deception requires only the absence of decency. Nolan's eyes flashed. You think you know everything? Wolfe nodded slightly. Not everything, enough. Kramer growled. All right, Reed, cut it. We got your keys, your logs, your terminal, your cart, your vent scratches. You want to keep pretending it's building quirks. Do it in court. Nolan's gaze flicked to Kramer and back to Wolfe. It was the look of a man recognizing that the policeman could hurt him with force, but Wolfe could hurt him with coherence. Wolfe leaned back slightly. Inspector Kramer is correct. Court is unpleasant. You may reduce your discomfort by speaking now. Also, you may reduce your sentence. Kramer snorted. That's not up to you. Wolfe did not bother to look at him. It is up to Mr. Reed whether the district attorney must assemble a story around him or may simply recite his own words. Nolan's hands flexed on the chair arms. It was the same motion Wolfe had noted earlier, the muscle memory of paper. It was not fear of prison that moved him first. It was fear of exposure, the kind that comes when a man realizes his careful tampering is now a diagram in someone else's mind. Dana Mercer spoke, voice low but steady. Why did you use my office? Nolan's head snapped toward her, and for a moment his expression carried the old irritation of a man who resented being reported. Then he caught himself, smoothed it, and looked away. Wolfe answered for him, because Wolfe does not permit suspects to control the narrative when he already owns it. Because your office was acoustically useful, Wolfe said. And because you were socially useful, you had a complaint on record that provided him with a convenient shadow. Dana's face tightened. She swallowed hard. Not from fear now, but from anger, and I respected her for it. Nolan's voice came out rougher. It wasn't about her. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. It was partly about her because you are a petty man, but it was chiefly about money. That word changed the air. Money always does. It makes crime suddenly practical, which is harder to forgive than passion, Wolfe continued. Harbor ledger finance, settlement processing due in January, approval timestamps that did not match receipt time, forged approval. Timing is not a mistake. It is a method to trigger payment early. Nolan's face hardened. You don't know what you're talking about. Wolfe's voice remained calm. Then educate us. That was Wolfe's trap. He invited Nolan to correct him, and by correcting him, Nolan would have to admit knowledge. Nolan hesitated. Then, slowly, he spoke. Harbor Ledger has liaisons. They work with companies to keep settlements moving. Sometimes approvals lag. Sometimes receipts come in late. Sometimes the dates do not line up because the world is messy. Wolfe's eyes were steady. And you made the world less messy by altering the dates. Nolan's jaw clenched. We fixed it. Kramer made a harsh sound. Fixed it? You mean forged it? Nolan's gaze flicked toward Kramer. You don't understand how these buildings operate. Payments, vendors, deadlines. If something misses a window, it turns into weeks of delay. People get yelled at. People lose contracts. Wolfe's tone was mild. So you prevented delay by cheating, Nolan swallowed. We moved dates so approvals matched what the system expected. It wasn't stealing, it was smoothing. Wolfe nodded, as if listening to a child explain why he took a cookie. Smoothing is a pleasant word. It hides the roughness, and you benefited. Nolan's voice tightened. There were incentives. Harbor Ledger pays for efficiency. A liaison told me if I helped keep approvals aligned, there would be a bonus. Kramer stepped forward a half pace, and I could see Kramer's patience thinning. Wolfe spoke softly. Mr. Reed, if you do not name the liaison, the police will name him later, and they may choose incorrectly. Choose now. Nolan's shoulders sagged a fraction. Trevor Salk. He was the liaison. Kramer grunted, satisfied. We'll find him. Wolfe nodded. Continue. Nolan exhaled. Harold Wynn noticed the mismatch. He was a contracts guy. He noticed timestamps. He flagged it. He wanted the original approval sheet. He said the scan didn't match. He said if the timing was wrong, he wanted proof before signing anything off. Wolfe's gaze sharpened. So he demanded the original paper. Yes, Nolan said, and his hands flexed again. He said he would not process it without the original. He said he would tell legal if he didn't get it. He was acting like a hero. A man asking for proof is not a hero, Wolfe replied. He is merely competent. Nolan's mouth twisted. Competent people cause trouble. Dana's eyes flashed. Competent people prevent fraud. Nolan looked at her, and for a moment the old contempt returned. Then he looked away again, because contempt is useless when you are cornered. Wolfe said, "You arranged a late meeting." Nolan nodded slowly. Harold left a note to himself. Meeting after 10, keep it private. That was for me. I told him I could show him the original approval sheet. I told him we could talk quietly, no need to involve legal. Wolfe's eyes were steady, and he believed you. Nolan's voice was bitter. He believed I was just maintenance. That's what people do. They think maintenance is harmless. Wolfe's tone was calm. Maintenance is rarely harmless. It has access. Nolan swallowed. I scheduled a maintenance check. Signed out the master key. I went up with my cart. I used a vendor access key so there would be no personal trail in the elevator log. I signed in a delivery badge, so if anyone asked later, I could claim a contractor was there. Driscoll's face reddened. That delivery was you. Nolan did not look at him. Yes. Driscoll's eyes shut for a moment, as if he wanted to disappear into his uniform. Wolfe nodded. Then you loosened the baffle. Nolan's jaw tightened. I knew the duct carried sound. I knew it had been damaged. I loosened it more, so it would carry clearer. I wanted witnesses to hear an argument at Dana's door. If something went wrong, there would be a ready suspect, the paralegal with the complaint. Dana's hands clenched, but she stayed quiet. She had learned, if nothing else, that speaking too early can give a criminal something to twist. Wolfe's voice remained mild. So you manufactured certainty. Nolan's eyes were dull now. Yes, Wolfe said. You entered the records room. Nolan nodded. Harold was there. I turned on the lights at 10:16. I spoke through the duct. I said the line. Sign it tonight. I wanted the witnesses to hear it. I wanted the noise. I wanted security distracted. Kramer's voice was hard. You used a building like a weapon. Nolan did not answer him. He continued, voice low. I told Harold to let it go. I told him it was not his fight. I told him he would lose his job if he made it a problem. I tried to intimidate him. Wolfe's gaze was steady, and he refused. Nolan's mouth tightened. He refused. He said he wanted the original approval sheet. He said he was going to legal in the morning. He said he had scanned it and saved it. He said he had proof. Wolfe leaned forward slightly, and then Nolan's voice went flat. Then I hit him. He said it like a man stating a mechanical action, as if he wanted to drain it of emotion. That is common. People who do terrible things often try to make them sound like chores. One strike, Nolan continued. He fell. No struggle. He didn't see it coming because he thought the argument was the fight. He didn't think the fight would be a hand. Wolfe's eyes did not soften. You killed him, Nolan swallowed. Yes. Kramer stepped forward. That's enough for me. Wolfe lifted a hand slightly. Not yet, Mr. Reed. Explain the hour after. Nolan's shoulders sagged. I had to clean it. Not blood. There wasn't much. But the proof. I needed the approval sheet. I needed the scan gone. I took the original from his folder. I found the file location on his computer. I went down to the maintenance terminal because it uses a generic operations login. I accessed the shared drive and deleted the scan labeled January approval proof at 11:02, I said. And you thought deletion meant removal? Nolan's eyes flicked to me, bitter. It keeps ghosts, I know that now. Wolfe nodded. You also arranged the room. Nolan nodded slowly. I left the lamp the way it normally is. I left the lights the way they would be if Harold were working late. I wanted it to look like routine work, not a staged confrontation. Wolfe's voice was calm. You wanted the building to appear ordinary, because ordinary is the best disguise. Nolan's mouth tightened. Yes. Kramer turned to his men in the hall and snapped an order. The plainclothes men entered, and Nolan was pulled up from the chair, cuffed properly this time. Nolan did not resist. His posture had collapsed into something smaller, the way men collapse when their explanation becomes their confession. Dana Mercer exhaled again, and this time the breath sounded like anger leaving her chest, not fear. She watched Nolan being taken out with a steady gaze. I could tell she would remember that moment for a long time. Driscoll looked ill. I didn't know. Wolfe regarded him. Ignorance is common. It is not innocence, but it is not murder. You will improve your procedures. Driscoll nodded rapidly, grateful for any instruction that did not include handcuffs. When the door closed behind Nolan and the office regained its quiet, Wolfe leaned back in his chair as if he had merely concluded a business conversation. Kramer remained, scowling as usual. We'll pull Harbor Ledger in. We got the liaison name, we got the fraud angle. Auditors will have a field day. Wolfe nodded. They should. Fraud is an infection. It spreads if ignored. Kramer grunted. And your girl is cleared. Dana flinched slightly at being called your girl. But Wolfe did not correct Kramer. Wolfe does not waste effort polishing Kramer's manners. Dana stood, still shaky but steadier than she had been. Thank you, she said to Wolfe. Then to me, Wolfe inclined his head once. Do not delay questions in the future, Miss Mercer. Her eyes met his. I won't. She left with Fritz guiding her to the front. Driscoll followed, looking like a man who would never again issue a badge without reading the name twice. Kramer stood a moment longer, eyeing Wolfe. You had to do the duct demonstration. Wolfe's mouth tightened slightly. Inspector, when a man uses sound as a decoy, it is fitting to show him sound can betray him. Kramer grunted. Sound is lousy evidence. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Sound is the easiest witness to corrupt. It has no eyes. Kramer's face shifted, grudgingly impressed. He left without another insult, which for Kramer counts as praise. When the house had settled again, with only the soft kitchen sounds in the distance and the faint, steady warmth in the air, I sat back at my desk and let the case drain out of me the way cold drains when you step inside. Wolfe looked toward the stairs, toward his orchid rooms, as if reminding himself that some systems should carry only life. Then he looked back at me. You see, Wolfe said, how easily certainty can be manufactured. I nodded. 2 people heard it. 2 people pointed. They were right about the words and wrong about the room. Wolfe's gaze was steady and wrongness. When reinforced by confidence is contagious, I said. Distance distorted the voices. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Distance did more than distort. It revealed the nature of the mind that would weaponize them. That was Wolfe's true conclusion. Nolan Reed had not merely killed a man. He had tried to make a building testify falsely. He had trusted metal to carry lies and trusted witnesses to cling to them. I stood, stretching. You know what gets me. Wolfe did not look up. Many things get you, Mr. Goodwin. You are easily gotten. The part where he loosened a baffle, I said. A little screw adjustment so 2 honest people would swear wrong. That's colder than the blow. Wolfe's mouth tightened slightly. Yes, the blow was anger. The baffle was intent. Outside, January kept its hold on New York. Wind, slush, and hurried footsteps. Inside, in Wolfe's warm office, the case was over, orderly and complete. Every thread tied, the missing proof, the forged timing, the decoy room, the manipulated duct, the man who had the keys and the knowledge. The voice that did not belong there had found its owner. And I had learned again what I always learn in these cases. You can corrupt people, you can corrupt paper, you can even corrupt sound, but you cannot corrupt the structure Wolfe builds when he decides to listen.